And good morning. It is a Monday edition of Glenn Clark Radio. I'm Glenn. That's what's left of my voice. I was outside all weekend doing things, which is really nice. Very pleasant weekend all around.
Sounds like a great time.
It was a great time. Well, I mean, other than I'm very tired and I got a lot of sun. But thanks to everybody who stopped by.
You look good. You look healthy, hydrated.
No. I got way too much sun. Way too much. Thanks, everybody who stopped by our charity car wash for the boys of Hamden on Saturday to benefit the SPCA. Great to see a lot of folks who came by and helped us raise some money. No, I was not wearing the Speedo. No, I don't think I'm going to do that again. We'll see. But I think those days might be over. Also bumped into a lot of folks at the Baltimore 10 Miler on Saturday morning. Our buddy Pat Ricard was there. It was good to see him. Chatted for a bit. He's busy being a dad these days. What else was I this weekend? I stopped by the Let's Go Music Festival down in Annapolis. It was just a great, busy weekend.
Big community weekend.
Yeah, all over. I mean, really all. I was up in Cecil County for a wedding at one point. Like, I was all over. I traversed central to northeast Maryland. No further than Annapolis. No further than literally northeast. Didn't get out west. Didn't get down to nothing like that. But it was a lovely weekend. And the weather was obviously quite nice. The Orioles tried to make it a perfect weekend, but yuck. Not a great thing. It's the funny thing because, obviously I've complained a great bit about on-base percentage. I don't even know what to say in a game where you record 15 hits and you only push 3 runs across.
Should have walked more, I guess.
It's a huge bummer. Like, everything about that game is a game that you should win. You have a 3-0 lead. Your pitcher gives you a good start. You collect 15 hits. There's no excuse for losing that baseball game. Now, you can nitpick plenty of things and plenty of spots the guys were in where they could have busted the game wide open and just simply didn't. You want to question why Cedric Mullins got another at bat? Look, obviously we're at breaking point, like we are, and it's a difficult thing to say because I can only say I love Cedric Mullins and you like his defense so much, but it ain't right. And continuing to pretend at this point like the next at bat is going to be the one that changes it. There's got to be an ability to have a mental health break for Cedric Mullins. It's just not working. So you want to question that? By all means. I get it. That's where, yes, you could say it's a matchup thing, but it feels more like it's a trying to trust a veteran, trying to give a veteran a chance. You want to question that? Fine. But Ryan Mountcastle was up with the bases loaded and 1 out. The one thing you can't do in that spot. One thing. And Ryan Mountcastle was probably this team's best player of the week. I don't know. We'll get the 3 up, 3 down a little bit later on. So it's difficult to be too critical of Ryan Mountcastle because, my God, all he did for the last week was hit. And hit and hit and hit some more. But the one spot where they needed it yesterday rolled over and hit into a double play. Yuck. It's just a gross game. Not because the game or the performance was so terribly bad, but just because it's a game that 1,000% you should win every freaking time. And they just didn't. Alas, they did take 2 out of 3 this weekend from the Tampa Bay Rays, continuing the streak of winning series against teams in the AL East, which will continue or hopefully continue this week as they take on Toronto starting tonight. Man of the match for Friday night was Jorge Mateo. John Colson, how are you? John was staring in here like there was something. Is our website down today, John Colson? I think our website might be down. You can get on that. I believe the website is not currently working. I don't know if my website is. I guess I should check that. Glenn Clark Radio appears to be fine. It appears to be a PressBoxOnline.com issue that we need to get straightened out. So I'll task John Colson with that. I'll put him in charge of
So what you do now? You delegate?
Well, I don't think he can fix it.
No.
I mean, he is the most worshipful Grand Master. Just got to make sure I get that right. He is the most worshipful Grand Master, but I just don't think this is his area.
You're gonna be shocked when he just
If he does it himself,
goes right there.
I will take back everything I said. I will 100% take it all back and say, good on you. My bad. I clearly screwed this up and did not respect you nearly enough. Anyway, man of the match from Friday night, Jorge Mateo with the massive 2-run double in an Orioles 3-1 victory. So he gets a 3rd star for the season, Jorge Mateo. Maybe that's a bit of a mild upset, something that I don't think many of us would have expected we would be saying for Jorge Mateo this year, but there you go. Jorge Mateo on the board for the 3rd time. And then, of course, from Saturday, when everybody was hitting home runs. One person hit 2 of them, and so I dropped a thumbtack down here. I'll find it later.
All right. We all got shoes on.
Doesn't need to be dealt with right now. Ryan Mountcastle, of course, hit a pair of home runs on Saturday. So Ryan Mountcastle will go back up on the board. 2nd man of the match for Ryan Mountcastle this season. So those are the men of the match from the weekend. Bummer for obviously the story of the weekend, you could say, is the Orioles winning 2 games, but that's only kind of true. The story of the weekend started on Friday when we learned that, unfortunately, John Means and Tyler Wells will not be returning this season. I'm writing about it today at PressBoxOnline.com as long as PressBoxOnline.com ends up working. So hopefully that'll be the case, because I would like for people to click on and read my column. I'm in a strange place. And joining us in a few minutes, Jon Meoli will try to help us with is there enough pitching? Do they have enough pitching? Yes, John? Do you have a Yes, I'd love an update. Are we back? No.
But we will be soon. Our crack digital person, Jennifer Nelson, who's far more competent than I.
Right.
And frankly, far more competent than you.
No, I agree. Wholeheartedly.
It might even be more competent than Griffin.
Debatable.
But she is currently on the phone with our hosting company, which is huge national major hosting company, Amazon.
I've heard of them. I'm familiar with their work.
It's their work, so it's not our work. So we are working on getting that fixed.
For the record, I'm not a blame person. I don't do blame. I don't.
Really?
Nope. No, not a blame person.
Never blamed ever?
No.
He's not a blame person?
I'm not. I'm about fixing it.
Oh, I'm a big fan of fixing it.
I have to have these conversations all the time. Oddly, the 2 people that I have to have them with the most.
But you blame him all the time.
Him? No. And Mrs. Clark. I don't care. See, you hear things. I don't care why something went wrong. I don't care. I don't care whose fault it is. I don't care anything. I just want you to fix it. That's it. And if you can't, tell me how I can help.
There you go.
That's my answer.
It's that simple, Griffin. Did you know that?
That's eternally my.
I'm learning.
I just want it fixed.
You're learning this now?
I'm learning.
There is an inclination from young people to be very defensive. I don't need the defensiveness.
Griffin's mom and I had a nice conversation on Friday.
That was a weird way for that to start.
I'm like,
wait a second.
Look at him; he's mortified over there. I'm not.
I like Griffin a great deal, but Griffin, it's not unique to Griffin. Young people have this it wasn't my fault. I don't care whose fault it was.
I agree.
I just want it fixed. That's this is not
sir, we are right on that.
I don't know when this started. I feel like it started when everybody was bickering about the Orioles and Ravens, and after the Ravens won the Super Bowl.
Yes.
And the Orioles had the Thursday night game scheduled, and everyone wanted to talk about, because I was still doing talk radio at the time. They just want to talk about whose fault this was. I'm like, I don't give a flying F whose fault it was. I want to know how we're going to fix it so that the game can be in Baltimore.
You don't have to understand. You would need to have understood at that point the game wasn't going to be in Baltimore.
No, I did know more about the situation than most people did. I actually knew a great deal, but it was just so
whose
long.
Fault was it?
It's the fault of the way the lease was written. The way that the lease was written to capitulate the Orioles, because the Orioles were the ones that were there first, and so they in order to give up
They were
some
the
of
big
their
dog on the block.
and because they had more dates.
Very
So they
big.
specifically wrote a lease, and this is the part that nobody knew, that said you have the right to any date during the year that you want. So literally, by law, the Orioles could say, we want to do an event on this Sunday. The Ravens can't play that day. Now, they didn't do that because it'd be a terrible partnership. But they did do some other things. Nobody will ever know this. They canceled the Baltimore Marathon one year. Now, magically, it didn't get canceled. But they canceled the Baltimore Marathon.
Well, they what they did is they decided to not allow the marathon to use their facility as it had every year.
After they had already lined it all up.
Correct.
After they had all not hey, next year we don't want to do this.
You know, they were a big part of the ill-fated
the car race.
Car
Yes, huge
race,
part of the ill-fated car race.
Which
But-
might have been the best thing that's happened, frankly, there.
That was
What a cluster.
well, I don't know. The first one was great, right? I mean, the race was terrible, but the first one looked cool.
Yes, it did.
The first one you got down there, you're like, man, there's so many people
This
here.
is really neat.
Like, there's an event going on in Baltimore. Like, this is worth all of the crap that me pretending like I gave a rat's ass about racing for a couple of months and me having it was worth all of it because it looked alive. And then you found out no one got paid. No one,
including
got
press
paid
box.
for their
Yes.
service. Oh, you were on a very exclusive list of everyone.
Yeah, very long list.
Everyone. And yet somehow they managed to do it again, despite the fact that nobody had gotten paid.
Yes.
They pulled another one off, but no one showed up for the second one.
New.
I got downtown and looked around and said, what am I doing here?
And there's a whole nother little background to that, but this
I
isn't the
can't
place.
wait
There's
to
a
come
lot
back.
of I don't think what are the Charm
Do
City?
you know where all their marketing
what was
money
it? The
went the second
Charm
year?
City Grand Prix? Is that what it was called? The Baltimore Grand. Maybe it was
I
just
think
the
it was
Baltimore Grand Prix.
But do you have any idea where all their
Where'd it go?
where 80% of their marketing money went
I don't.
for the second race?
I don't know.
To the people who oversee and run Camden Yards.
Oh, well, there you go. There you
To
go.
that team.
There you go. Yeah, well,
So all the ads ran on
yep.
a sports network.
Yep.
and-
And it never happened again.
Correct.
Who knows if even they got paid. But that might have been part of the deal of allowing them to do it again. It was a nightmare. But that really was the part that nobody knew, is that, like, basically the Orioles could just say,
Right.
this is the way it works. You have no recourse. So at that point, there was no recourse. Like, and then there was a lot of infighting between the Ravens are throwing shade at the Orioles. Like, the Ravens were throwing shade at the Orioles because the Orioles weren't willing to negotiate.
Yeah.
Like, the Orioles just said, we have the right. We're not talking to you. Your problem, not ours. Which, again, was their right. They had every right to do it. And that was sort of my, like, I don't care whose fault this is. This is weak. Just fix
The
it.
thing is, and it wasn't fault-based. It
Yes.
was because fault tends to be towards a mistake. This wasn't
Right.
a mistake. They were exercising a
They
right.
They
that
had
which
the
was
right within the lease to say, this is the way it is. We're not even going to talk to you about it. We're not going to have a conversation about moving a night game to the afternoon. We're not going to do any of that. Sorry, we're not doing it.
And I'll be introducing you to new intern Xavier.
Oh, Xavier.
In a few minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, very good.
He will be here at some level to do your beck and call needs to
Okay.
handle anything you might need.
Well, does he want to learn
Nice.
broadcasting, or does he?
Wants to learn it all. He's my intern, right?
Right,
He's-
I understand
but,
that.
But,
does he?
yes, very
Does
much.
he want to learn how to, like, run the show? And
Might
all that?
let's see when he gets in.
All right, you'll be.
I interviewed him for my stuff, not your
I'm
stuff.
not. That's. I'm not. I'm not stepping on toes, man.
No
I'm
no
not
toes to
doing
be
any of
stepped,
that.
and there are no toes to be
I'm
stepped
just trying
on.
to figure out what we're doing. All right,
Okay,
thank you.
guys.
Please let me know when the website is working again. So
I'm gonna check.
I
Have you
can-
looked in the last minute?
yeah, it's still down.
Okay.
Still down.
Yep. Well,
But
she's
we
on,
can email.
She's on the phone with Amazon.
Webmaster at 725-46445-1e.nxcli.net.
in parentheses.
they're
That
helpful.
that is Amazon.
Yeah, I figured that was probably the
Okay.
case.
Bye,
Yeah,
guys.
there's John Colson. He's on it to try to get the website fixed today. What a Monday, right? You come back in, you're like, hey, everything's great. We got a lot of stuff to get done, and then you say, oh, the website doesn't work. Well, that's a problem. That's not going to be okay. So don't go to PressBoxOnline.com/radio if you leave the video. Instead, go to GlennClarkRadio.com and you can listen there. But PressBoxOnline.com/radio, where I like to direct you, that is not functional.
Is this all a
maybe
ploy from
maybe
you?
send out a tweet that
Okay.
says that so people
Okay.
know.
Yeah, you're
Like,
right.
don't go to PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Go to
This is a
GlennClarkRadio.com.
ploy from you. You want more people to click Glenn Clark Radio.
No, it is not at all. I prefer people to go
took
to
down
PressBox. I would actually like to get rid of GlennClarkRadio.com altogether. That's a dirty little secret about your boy GC. I'd like to just take everything there and put it over somewhere else, but I don't make those decisions. That's not for me. That's above me. All right. Anyway, yes, I'll be writing whenever the website works. I will be writing today about the totality of the news on Friday. And there's just something about when you get bad news about multiple players. When you get bad news about one player, like even unless it's the quarterback of the football team, short of that, when you get bad news about any one player, your inclination is to say, well, no one player is bigger than the team, and the fate of the team won't be determined by one player, and you can overcome that. It's weird when it goes from one player to two, how quickly it seems to turn to like, why have you forsaken me? Like, why all of a sudden you blame a higher power that you think has it out for your team when it goes from bad news from one to bad news for two. The day leading up to the start of the season where the news was about Jon Means and Kyle Bradish felt crushing because it was two. Like, it's just weird the way when it's two players, both who you believe. It's one thing, like, I'm trying to be, if your football team loses a special teams guy, it don't feel the same way. But two players that are real contributors, that are a significant part of what you expect to do, then it becomes painful. Jon Means, I think, for a lot of people, had been turning into found money at this point because of the sheer totality of the injuries over the last few years. I think there were a lot of people that treated Jon Means like, well, I hope he can get through the season and be productive, but I don't know that I'm counting on it. But when he got back, I think we were more inclined to count on it and think about how deep this rotation could be. That was the exciting part. The exciting part was now imagine Burns, Bradish, Grayson, Means. And, of course, we all see how Cole Irvin has pitched this season, so now you're like, wow. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Dean Kramer, but Dean Kramer's the sixth of that group if Jon Means was Jon Means again. It was exciting, that possibility. Tyler Wells, we had all accepted, was not going to be back in the rotation unless something was going to go wrong. But the exciting part about Tyler Wells was the belief that with that much depth in the rotation, what could Tyler Wells now do when they finally put him into a specialist role in the back end of the bullpen, which is what so many of us believed Tyler Wells should be doing. So all of a sudden, with Jon Means in the rotation, the possibility of Tyler Wells coming back and going into the bullpen, you have incredible depth in the rotation, and you might be able to address what everyone seems to believe is the biggest problem that faces this team in terms of trying to win the World Series, which is the bullpen. So, this hurts you in both. I had a few folks, again, because I was outside a lot this weekend. I had a lot of people coming up to me, hey, man, what do you make of it? What's going to... And it's easy to say, like, hey, neither one of these are, like, the top five most... I don't even think they're in the top 7 if we ranked, like, who would be the most crushing player to lose from this team. Gunnar, Adley, Corbin Burns would be the top 3 in whatever, order you wanted to put them in. Bradish would probably be right after that, other than obviously Saturday, and we'll get back to that. But other than that, Bradish has been great. Grayson and Cole Irvin, because they've been very, consistent. You could put them in that conversation, so we're at 6. I don't know who would be the third. I guess Jordan Westberg at this point has been the third most consistent. O'Hearn's been really good, but, is kind of unique because he's I don't know. Somewhere in that you'd be looking at the moment probably your
Corey Mateo. Like, what are we?
I'm not. I get it. He's been good, but I'm not ready to say that. I still think Mountcastle would be higher on the list than Mateo would be. And
well, I'm just because I'm looking at the board right behind.
I get it.
All the stars.
Yeah, all the guys that are 3 stars. If Santander continues to turn things around, then he'd probably be on that list. So I don't think we'd even. we'd still have to probably put Craig Kimbrell on that list.
Yeah.
Like we probably would. And so we're getting to the point where we have 10 guys before we'd even consider
What about
John.
like James McCann? Like
No, but I get it. Like I think that you would believe that you could find a veteran backup catcher that, could be available for a song. Not to take anything away from the role that James McCann plays, but no, not
how about just no more injuries? That'd be
in favor of that. The point being, it's easy to say, hey, these aren't even the top 10 of guys that you could, least afford to lose. But in one area, it takes a strength. And it's easy to say, hey, starting pitching was not a priority for the Orioles. If we were talking about what the Orioles might do before the trade deadline, starting pitching is not a conversation that we would have been having. The Orioles were comfortably going to have a six-man rotation. They still might be able to have a six-man rotation when Dean Kramer returns if they want, because Albert Suarez has, gotten the job done. Starting pitching has not been a priority that we've been discussing for the trade deadline. But all of a sudden, one injury and one shot at the depth reminds you that if you don't make a move before July 30th and you have something else happen after July 30th, you have no recourse for solving that. So if on August 5th, someone else were to get hurt, you're boned. That thing that was an extraordinary strength, your starting pitching depth, suddenly becomes not a weakness, because again, you still have comfortably 5 when Kramer comes back, arguably 6 if you include Suarez, with the argument still that Cade Povich could get into that conversation at some point this season. But we're arguing in order to get to the point where you feel like you have depth. I think the injuries to Jon Meoli, and Tyler Wells, of course, was always a backup plan for the rotation. I think the fact that Means and Wells are both going to be out for the season puts starting pitcher back into play for the trade deadline. Does it vault ahead of the bullpen? Probably not. I still think the bullpen is probably the bigger area of need. But in a way, trying to find a starter might be the way that you go about helping your bullpen, because again, it could end up, pushing someone back into a bullpen role. Not that I think, again, Tyler Wells was the one guy of this group that I really liked the idea of him being a specialist. I don't know that I feel that way about Dean Kramer. I don't know that I feel that way about Albert Suarez. I think Suarez would be a long man. I think Kramer would be a long man. I don't know that either one of them, I don't know, maybe Suarez, his whiff rate was pretty good to start the season. Maybe Suarez could be more of a specialist. I think you have to, if you want to win a World Series, I don't think the plan can be, well, just hope no one gets hurt. I think the plan has to be what the Dodgers do. And I get it, the Dodgers have only won one World Series, and it was kind of a gimmicky World Series. But it's have 6 starting pitchers at all times. Have more starting pitchers than you have opportunities for starting pitchers at all times. And that, to me, is why the story of the injuries news from Friday is, even that alone, even if you didn't have high hopes for Jon Means, I think has to put starting pitcher back into the equation. And I am 1,000% staring at the Chicago White Sox right now. Like, I am on the phone tomorrow to find out what the cost is of doing like an Eric Fetty, Michael Kopech duo to try to address both things. I think the cost for Crochet is probably too high because he's definitely got. I think he's 2 more years of arbitration eligibility after this season. So my gut is that's too high a cost, but not one that I'm not I want to find out. I mean, we know what they were asking for Dylan Cease, although we also know what they ended up getting for Dylan Cease, and we were like, it doesn't seem like that was that crazy.
2 more years of arbitration
for Crochet afterwards. I'd be making those calls. I'd be looking at quick to Chicago. And I get it, Kopech's not having a great year, but it's not like he's having a bad year either. He's not been dominant. But I would at least be trying to see if you couldn't throw it in. I would be enamored with the idea of trying to do both things. That's what it feels like you need. It also, by the way, doing a deal for somebody that has more than just this year of control, a guy like Fetty, could give you further insurance if Corbin Burns, presuming Corbin Burns leaves, and if John Means leaves as well. And that conversation becomes complicated again too, right? Like that becomes, does this bring John Means back into the Orioles fold in free agency? Do they look at it in an almost Brandon Woodruff-like way, where you're not going to love what you're going to be seeing at the market, so maybe you come on back to us for a 2-year deal. We recognize that next year is probably not a big part of the equation, but we're essentially, because you've been a good soldier, we're giving you 2 years, and we want you to be helpful to us in 2026. Is that possible that that's the way this plays out? I hate that for John Means, who has really been a stalwart in some bad years and some bad moments. But this is the reality now. Maybe this does bring him back into the equation, back into the fold for an Orioles team, because the numbers would be much smaller and you could do a 2-year deal. What was Woodruff's deal? It was like 2 years, $19 million, something like that. Yeah. I mean, that maybe that's too much. That can't be right because they knew he wasn't going to pitch this season. So I feel like the number maybe it was 2 years. I don't remember what the number was for Woodruff, but it was a very similar concept. And ironic, 17? 17. Despite the fact that they kind of knew he wasn't going to pitch this season, they kind of sort of did him a solid. We'll throw you a little bit of money in a year that you're not going to be pitching, and give you a nice number for next year, with our expectations being that you're helpful. I don't know, given how much John Means has missed the last couple of seasons, I don't know that the Orioles would do that, but perhaps. All right, today's show is brought to you by Sports and Social, the best place to watch all of the finals action. Both the NBA and the NHL are all set. We'll talk about that later in the program. The best place to watch all that and all of the fights is at Sports and Social inside Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. FanDuel Sportsbook just steps away. Make your reservation for all of the big finals events coming up over the course of the next couple of weeks. Of course, when there's a question about depth and how much the Orioles have pitching-wise, the person to turn to is our friend Jon Meoli from the Baltimore Banner, the man behind Arms on the Farm, and he is back with us this morning here on GCR. John, it's Glenn. It's good to talk to you, buddy. Thank you for taking the time for us.
To you as well. Good morning.
So, I think my reaction to the news on Friday was, on paper, it seems like the Orioles have the starting pitching depth that they can survive losing John Means. I guess the question now to me becomes, this is a long season, and more injuries, unfortunately, are likely to happen. Do they have the depth to survive something else going wrong, whether that's another injury or whether that's, someone, Dean Kramer not being the same guy when he returns, or Albert Suarez turning into a pumpkin at some point? Do they have enough pitching depth to win a World Series if something else goes wrong between now and the end of the year?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of real estate between survive and win the World Series. I think also, I think that what last year's playoffs taught maybe the Orioles and me specifically is I was not super concerned about who's going to be pitching in the 6 or 7 without Felix Bautista, because I figured they were going to have 2 of their very good starting pitchers in the bullpen, whether it was Dean Kramer or Tyler Wells was already back there, but John Means was going to come in the rotation. There was that ability to push those guys into the bullpen and have those impact arms in the playoffs. And you just use your best pitchers anyways in the playoffs. And that didn't happen because John Means got hurt. The plans went pretty much kaput from the second they were laid. So I think that they're going to need to tap into the high minors depth pretty quickly, just based on how the season is going. I feel like every pitcher except for Corbin Burns and Cole Irvin have been hurt at some point. So you have to make sure that they're ready to do that. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting talent that comes up from Norfolk and the minors over the next couple of months. And I think that it's going to be incumbent on the Orioles to give those guys a chance to pitch in the big leagues and get settled, because it's going to be hard. I don't think there's been anybody in this organization who's come up and not had like a 7 ERA after a month on the starting front in a long time. So you're going to have to build in that period and see if they're going to work and where they fit in. I think there's a lot more talent than we've been accustomed to that could be summoned, and it has also been a long time since anyone has been called up from AAA on the pitching side with the circumstances the way they are, where you have to perform right now.
Let's start, with some of those guys. And obviously the one that leads the conversation is Cade Povich, because he's been outstanding. Is Cade Povich ready to be a major league starter at this point, John?
I think the best version of Cade Povich is the guy who can locate 5 pitches in the strike zone and doesn't give up very much hard contact and can get swing and miss with his fastball at the top of the zone and get guys to swing at the off-speed pitches because they're going to be in the zone. Like that version can. I think that's how the Orioles, using a very broad brush, but it's one that covers a lot of the people we would be talking about, close or not close to the big leagues. That's what they want all of these guys to be able to do, is to get those swings in the strike zone. Cade Povich is somebody who, over the course of his time with the organization, has not always been that consistent in doing that and in being in the strike zone. He's been somebody who likes to paint on the corners. So it's going to be really fascinating to see which version, when that happens, comes up. If he's, somebody who's felt comfortable throwing, say, his changeup in the zone to AAA hitters because they can't put good swings on it, can't put good contact on it, and then he throws a good one in the zone to a big league hitter who hits it, onto the flag court, that's going to be something he's going to have to figure out. Okay, can I still do this? Am I going to start nibbling? Can I keep attacking? If he is aggressive in the strike zone, he is absolutely good enough to do that. I think that he's been that a lot more this year. I think the pitch quality has ticked back up after some issues with the AAA ball once he got up there last year, and it's just a matter of doing that and being consistent in the strike zone. But that version certainly can.
I bring up, I separate Cade Povich, and I want to ask a broader question, but I know that people have brought up Chase McDermott. I don't know, man. I look at the numbers and I say, I don't know that that's someone that I'd be comfortable having in a major league rotation, for a team that's trying to win a World Series. I think that maybe he could help in another way, but I don't know that I see Chase McDermott in that conversation as being someone that could help as a starter if needed.
I think that Michael Ayers even said it himself, these guys have kind of been attached to at the hip since they were acquired. And it's a more extreme version of that with Chase McDermott. Like if he is in the strike zone, I think before his last start in May, he had walked like 4 guys in the month. In April, he had walked like 7 guys per 9. So like there's one that's good and there's one that's not out of those samples. But I think it's the same type of thing. This guy, I think he had the lowest opposing batting average against in all the minors last year. When he throws the ball over the plate and trusts it over the plate in the zone, guys don't make good contact on it. And you need a level of confidence in your stuff and confidence in the ability to repeat your delivery and keep your stuff in the strike zone. And overall, like confidence that you are back to throw these pitches in the strike zone in the big leagues to do it. Results be what they are. And I think there's probably a degree more volatility. There's also a world where Chase McDermott, with the stuff he has, is just a really good reliever. Those concerns would still exist, but the ability to miss bats would be something the Orioles bullpen could use too. I keep them both in the same bucket, kind of, and it's a pretty dicey bucket to be relying on when you're trying to win a World Series.
So that to me is what you just brought up. Jon Meoli from the Baltimore Banner is with us here in GCR. What you just brought up to me is, I think, the more compelling part of the conversation, which is it time for at least one of these guys to just be at the major league level, right? Like to figure out if they can get major league hitters out, even in the bullpen, and let's just say it's Povich, who I think they still look at as being a part of the equation as a starter long term. But even if you don't have the comfort or the spot for him right now, is it time for him to come to the major league level, figure out if he can get hitters out, knowing that if needed, you can stretch him back out later in the season and give him a shot to make spot starts, earn a rotation spot if that becomes a conversation, if there are further problems?
I think the answer to that is closer to yes than no, just because this bullpen, as presently constructed, it seems like it's really tough for Brandon Hyde to manage.
Yeah.
It seems like it's really tough for them to do all the things they want to, whether it's matchup-wise, rest-wise. They don't have, there's the volatility in the bullpen. You talk about bullpens being volatile, and it's not like a stuffy bullpen. There's not a ton of stuff. It's guys that pitch to contact. And when you pitch to contact and it's not going your way, it can go pretty sideways. I think we saw it yesterday with Dylan Tate. We've seen that with Keegan Aiken in some recent outings. I think that they might have to take a different approach to kind of flooding these guys in the majors, and they have. DL Hall is kind of off in his own bucket because there was a lot of weird stuff going on there with workload and injuries. But like Jason Rodriguez came right up, made 10 starts, wasn't very good. Kyle Bradish, came up, wasn't very good, had his shoulder thing, reset, basically been a Cy Young candidate since. You go back further to Dean Kramer. When he and Keegan Aiken and Bruce Zimmerman were all getting starts all at once, those guys were up and down constantly because it was really hard to get results. I think that you would probably be in good shape if you gave these guys a chance to see what it felt like, see what it looked like. The flip side is that those are going to be big moments in big games. There's not a lot of times that Brandon Hyde could just hide guys coming out of the bullpen, and he has to be willing to use them and want to use them and feel comfortable using them. And I think that's like the same way that Jackson Holiday wasn't going to play against lefties early in the season. These guys aren't going to be coming in big spots or getting handled with kid gloves coming out of the bullpen for the Orioles. They're going to be asked to do real things. If the Orioles don't think they can do real things yet, then this conversation doesn't even start.
Is there anyone else from the group of starters that they had? I think the bummer about the Tyler Wells thing, John, is that he was the guy that you looked at and said he might be a leverage arm. And we had seen it, right, like in some doses, that Tyler Wells might be able to handle being a specialist, being a leverage arm at the back end of a bullpen. Is there anyone else from this group? Because I don't know how I feel about the idea of Dean Kramer as a leverage back-end arm. I think he has the stuff that he could do it. I don't know about the temperament. Albert Suarez had a really interesting whiff rate to start the season where you're like, I don't know that I saw it in the stuff, but the whiff rate was really good. Is there someone else from this group that you would say, I think that guy could end up helping solve the problem that the Orioles have usage-wise, because I do think that person might be capable of transitioning into being a leverage arm?
Not to me, and not necessarily because of people who, because of any of their traits. It's just that they don't have the starting depth to make that kind of move. There is a universe, I suppose, where like at the All-Star break, you just have Cade Povich and Chase McDermott in the rotation and like pitching really well. But, I feel like after the Yankees left town, I wrote, and I believed, and I still believe, even though they're hurt, like the strength of this team's pitching depth is how good the quality. It's not that they have a bunch of guys that they can call on in AAA. They have some, but like all their starters were on this roster, and in a matter of a couple weeks, like really one day on Friday, you lose two of them for the season. So now you have the guys that are in the rotation right now. You have Dean Kramer, and that's pretty much it. So the idea that one of those would fix a bullpen role doesn't really sit with me. And I go back, I feel like it was the first year, it was 2019, it was Michael Elias' time. He was asked about, spending $4 million and getting like a grown-up reliever to kind of settle the bullpen. And he said that, when the starters are doing their job, that's not as important a thing to need. Granted, that team wasn't trying to win anything, actively at that point. Right. So it's a different conversation, but I rely on, the starters being good starters. And then there's less moments where you need those relievers.
You wrote about, the idea of acting with more urgency. And I know you wrote in the context of like, making some moves with guys that you have. I come back to like, on Thursday, when we were having conversations about the Orioles moving towards the trade deadline, I was not talking about the need to acquire a starting pitcher. They had needs. I didn't think starting pitching was one of them. And it seems crazy that the news of Friday would suddenly completely change that because they lost one guy that was going to be a starting pitcher. Tyler Wells was not going to go back to the rotation. And yet I find myself all of a sudden on Saturday saying, boy, I don't know, man. Like, I might be calling the White Sox about Eric Fetty because, as I said to begin this conversation, one other thing goes wrong. You have one other issue. Somebody could get hurt in August and you have no recourse. Like, you can't go back to the trade market in August. It's over on July 30th. I would be, knowing the seriousness of trying to win a World Series, even if I like 1-4 for sure and maybe 1-5 when Dean Kramer's there, and I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't know. I feel like I would be back in the starting pitching market at this point, and specifically with guys that would have another year should Burns and Means be gone next year.
Yeah, I think that's probably – I think those conversations were probably happening before Friday. The Orioles know a lot more about these medical things than we do.
Right.
I mean, everyone can kind of read between the lines when Brandon and I basically stop asking me about Tyler Wells. I'll tell you when we know something, what's happening there.
Yeah.
Jon Means walking off, holding his elbow, like that's, you can see what's going on. They know this type of stuff. My own personal, thought is that like pitcher Aaron Hicks is going to walk through the door at like the Orioles like hour of need in the next couple weeks. Some guy who for whatever reason is like completely fine and ends up available at the exact moment the Orioles need a starter in June. And that will be the short-term solution. But I think the Orioles are in a place where they need to make sure that they are protected in case this happens again, keeps happening, whatever language you want to use. This is not something you play with. There's a school of thought, I'm sure, where like all you got to do is get there and get to the playoffs. And, Corbin Burns will start, if things go right, Corbin Burns will start like 7 games and the Orioles will win all those 7 games and they piece it around those. But that's not like planning. That's just like hoping. They need to plan for the idea that something could happen in August, September, like you said, and they need to be covered for it. I think the pitchers they have in the rotation are going to be fine. And I think they're 1 or 2 issues away from really having questions. And the way to answer those questions is to be proactive in my mind.
I agree. And before I let you go, what's your gut tell you about what this might mean for Jon Means' future? Like, I brought up the scenario, the Brandon Woodruff comparison, and I get it. Like, Woodruff had been better more recently than Means had, but like, is there some weird world where maybe this continues Jon Means' relationship with the Orioles somehow?
I think that's absolutely possible. With the caveat that a lot of things that have been true in the past, this organization might change a little bit with the new ownership
right.
and with, the team actually being good. My impression that I've gotten through conversations I've had is that like, as an organization, like the idea of like signing up for injury risk is not really something that they've wanted to do or been interested in doing, just given like, if we have X amount of resources and we're propping up, a quarter of that on like a faulty foundation, like that's not a good use of money. My gut tells me that, the prospect of getting like 60 good innings over like a 2-year span from Jon Means is going to be worth more to a team with a lot more money or with a lot less care for that. Like a Braves or something like that, a team that just won't care if they only get 60 innings. I think the Orioles, if they're going to be paying like the type of money, even at like a prorated rate that somebody of Jon Means' talent and like quality deserves, I think they're going to want a little more
I get it.
assuredness on that. But it's certainly possible.
I know that I said the news this morning, the Orioles are calling up Connor Norby. Jeff Passan reported it. I don't know yet. Can you walk me through where you think Connor Norby can play at the major leagues at this point? I think this is way overdue. I don't think there's been a justification for Ramon Arias particularly at this point, but where defensively can Connor Norby line up and play at the major league level right now?
I think that second base would be the primary spot. I'm not sure either of the corner outfields, definitely not left field at Camden Yards, but he's played more corner outfield this year than he has second base at Norfolk, so the Orioles have to be considering that as a real thing. It seems like with Mateo and getting bonked on the head with a bat yesterday, and Urias playing the way he has, I think that he might just be in that like right-handed hitting second base mold. I'm trying to treat this like a Joey Ortiz type thing, where he came up and it was long overdue, and he did deserve to be there and he did play well, but it wasn't like he was coming up to play every day. We've seen a lot more guys come up and be on the roster or on the bench to fill a role versus to play. And I think, especially given the circumstances, it seems like it's happening. That's kind of more where I'm landing with Connor Norby.
Jon Meoli, of course, Baltimore Banner is how you find his work, and Arms on the Farm and at Jon Meoli on Twitter is how you follow him. John, always appreciate you, man. Thanks for taking the time for us this morning.
Absolutely. Talk soon, man.
It's Jon Meoli with us here on GCR. Yeah, I was rolling about the pitching and other conversations, so we didn't. Yes, Connor Norby is getting called up to the point. Does it seem like there's probably a correlation between the fact that just a wonky moment yesterday where Jorge Mateo gets bonked on the head accidentally by Cedric, of course, of all people, Cedric Mullins, and was taken out of the game, and now Connor Norby gets called up today. Yeah, it feels like it's more likely that than it is them making a dramatic decision about someone else. I think there are a few dramatic decisions that could be made. I guess it would be weird to me that you would decide one day later that Jorge Mateo definitely will be out long enough that he needs to be on, a 10-day IL for a concussion.
Are there like special rules with concussion IL? Like, is it?
I don't believe
like
there are.
Is the 7-day IL still a thing? I guess it's not.
I don't know. I don't believe MLB concussion IL rules. I don't think. I don't know of any. I mean, obviously, it's something that we don't deal with a lot. Like, is it 7-day? Maybe it does still exist. Maybe that 7-day injured list does still exist.
Oh, is it only in the minor leagues? So then.
No, I mean, hang on a
majors?
second. After the 2018 were renamed. Yeah, it looks like it still exists.
Okay.
So it looks like that would be an option.
Okay, then maybe.
Then that would make, obviously, a lot more sense. I mean, you're still signing up for a week. Concussions are so difficult to have a conversation about because we do need to treat them very seriously. It feels like...
And they affect such different effects.
100%. So, sometimes you can't look at... You can't... I wish this wasn't true. I've had multiple concussions, and it's one of the more embarrassing subjects for me to talk about in my life because I wish I could tell you it was from some outstanding athletic career. Most of them were for drunken shenanigans, just a straight shoot. A lot of people might remember the story of the week before my wedding. Buddies threw me a bachelor party, and we were playing Can Jam, and I was drunk, and I ran headfirst into a fence. I mean, just going after a Frisbee, and I'm telling you, I could not sit in a lit room for a week. I had the lights off, I had to have sunglasses on. That was the last one, and that was when, like, there's a time in my life where I had to change who I was as a person. There's things that like occur that you think back on and say, hey, why did I don't talk about it a lot when people like say, hey, why'd you stop drinking? I give other answers like my kids, and they are probably the biggest reason, my kids, or health or whatever I talk about. Like, believe it or not, I haven't become a pinnacle of health since I stopped drinking.
You look good.
I didn't suddenly just start having nothing but like kale at all times. Some of it also dates back to I had multiple drunken concussions in my life. Multiple. Like, Proctor and I will joke about a day where we went out and played Frisbee golf, and I couldn't walk. And we laugh about it, but, like, I had to do a little, like, accounting in my life where I realized it was because the night before we were out drinking in Fells or wherever we were. Maybe we were in Canton. I think it's where we were. It was in Canton. And at one point, a buddy of mine and I were just going at it. Like, because that's what we would do. We'd just start, like, wrestling. And I got slammed into a potato chip stand at a bodega. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, like, yes, we laugh about it all the time, But like,
Maybe you can drink. You just need to wear a helmet.
maybe.
I think that's the answer.
Maybe. But like, so I don't know. I don't know what Jorge Mateo. Yes, it feels like it's more likely that the Conor Norby decision is because of Jorge Mateo than it is that they're ready to make a dramatic decision about Arias, about putting Cedric Mullins on the injured list or optioning Cedric Mullins. It just doesn't feel like. I always default to the Orioles not making the big move, right? Like, it's more likely they're making the more reasonable thing. And yes, if the 7-day IL is still an option for Jorge Mateo, then that does seem like it's a more likely scenario. But I'm totally fine with them making the big move for Ramon Arias. I'm very much fine at this point. Look, it pains me because I love Cedric Mullins, but I would be very much fine with them making a more dramatic Cedric Mullins-related decision, whichever that would be, whether that would be a mental health IL stint, or if he's not on board with that, then exercising the option and saying, you got to reset. We can't. We can't anymore. We've tried. We can't. But Conor Norby's going to be with the team in Toronto. Conor Norby has deserved to be at the major league level for some time. He's ready. We'll see. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to work. It doesn't guarantee that he's going to come up and light the world on fire. It also doesn't guarantee that there's a long-term plan for Conor Norby. Again, Jackson Holliday is still very much the second baseman moving forward. So Conor Norby might be playing second right now and might still be the guy they're most looking to trade at the deadline. So we'll see how this goes. But Conor Norby is coming up today. That is the news. All right, they'll be talking more about it today, this afternoon. Stan the Fan Charles, Ross Grimsley, Luke Jackson. They get together every Monday to talk baseball. And today they will be getting together at 3:30, facebook.com/PressBoxSports if you want to check out the show live. If you miss it live, you can watch it later, youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or PressBoxOnline.com/video. What, you okay?
Yes, I'm okay.
What?
Sorry. For some reason, I thought I did not download the breaks. I did.
It's all great. It's always very good when we're dealing with this at 10:53. Always, we are.
No, I was on it.
We're here.
I was, yeah.
We're here. Jesus. All right, we come back in. We'll preview the Blue Jays. Dan Shulman, you of course know Dan Shulman not only as the Blue Jays play-by-play voice, but you know him from ESPN as well. Dan Shulman will check in with us next. It's Glenn Clark Radio.
What company makes your home more energy efficient, purifies your air, kills all viruses, and qualifies you for $6,000 in rebates? A.J. Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
The latest edition of Press Box is available now. On the cover, Luke Jackson profiles Grayson Rodriguez, talking to people who have been part of his path as the Orioles hope he'll become their next homegrown ace. Also inside, we remember legendary Maryland basketball coach Lefty Driesell with stories from legends like Roy Williams and Bobby Cremins about what it was like to go up against the old left-hander. Press Box is available at over 500 locations around Baltimore, including 60 Royal Farm stores. You can also find the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
Contrary to what some people believe, I actually like this guy when he sleeps. Glenn Clark, talking sports.
I'll be back, I promise. Just got to plug in the power for my computer because I realized it was about to die. Yeah, so Nick Vespi is also joining the Orioles in Toronto, and I didn't bring it up. I was trying to poke around. Nick Vespi definitely has not been down for 15 days. So the question becomes, and this is maybe an accounting question. I don't know the answer. Does it have to be a pitcher that goes to the IL in order for you to be allowed to bring Nick Vespi back? That's the part that I just don't know the answer to. Because the first thing, when you see that, you'd be like, oh, they're going to go ahead and give up on Vieira. Well, that they can't bring Vespi back yet for Vieira, unless Vieira's hurt. But I don't know, for example, like if it's an option for them to make a corresponding move. If they do both moves at the same time, can Mateo going to IL, the quote-unquote corresponding – it doesn't seem like that would work because it would seem like even for a moment you'd be at 12-14 and not 13-13, and you're not allowed to do that. So I assume that means there has to be another pitcher going to IL. I don't know who that would be. Did I miss something? I don't know who the other pitcher would be that would be headed to the IL from this weekend.
They just say, unless they're just gonna say, Tate hurt his elbow or whatever, and
didn't look good. I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. But Nick Vespi is also joining the. Keegan Aiken. Can you make up an injury?
Yeah, that's it.
He was better on. Was it Saturday when he pitched? When did he pitch? Did he pitch Saturday? Everybody pitched Saturday. It felt like everyone had to pitch on Saturday. He had 3 bad outings before that, but was better. If you're bringing back a lefty, it makes sense to switch a lefty for a lefty, right? Mm-hmm. So like maybe there's an Aiken IL stint in there. I don't know. Anyway, Nick Vespi and Connor Norby are both joining the Orioles in Toronto. Is the point that I'm attempting to make just awkwardly? We don't know any more of the details. We assume that Jorge Mateo is involved with the Norby one. The question would be what would be, because there would have to be an IL move in order for Vespi to be back, because he has not been down long enough for him to just call him back up. It's going to have to be an IL. So we'll find that out at some point today. Presumably, we will find that out at some point today.
It'll be as soon as we go off air.
Almost certainly will be the way that
we could go until like 3 o'clock. And
yes,
they won't announce it until
3:01. 3:01, they will let us know. All good. It's not. I doubt it's going to be something earth-shattering. It's going to require a full breakdown of the move or anything like that. But just would be interesting. I would just like to know because I'm a curious little beaver. That's all. All right. Hour number 1 of today's show is in the books. I don't have a lot to say. I did watch a little bit of the hockey last night. Seemed like a awesome scene in Edmonton as the Oilers clinched the Western Conference. So they will now face the Florida Panthers. A lot of consternation on the internet last night about how unhappy the Disney executives probably are with getting, like, it's one thing that you have to, like, the NBA, even when the markets aren't great, the NBA, the finals are so big, you're going to pop numbers, right? Like, hockey, not quite the same. And so the point that was made by many is the Disney people had Dallas, New York. Both teams up 2-1 in their respective conference finals. Like, they had to be saying, all right, we've got it. We're going to draw big numbers. And in the span of a couple days, they go from Dallas, New York to Edmonton, Miami. And I get it. Dallas isn't like a traditional hockey hotbed. And you would say the market size between Dallas and Miami isn't so dramatically different. But, like, Dallas is a little bit more of it's less transient, I guess is what I would say. Like, there's a more hardcore fan base there in general that probably activates. I don't want to be disrespectful to the Miami fan base. They certainly seem like they've been activating in these playoffs. But, yeah, I don't think it's exactly the market matchup that the Disney folks were dreaming about when it comes to the Stanley Cup Finals. But that'll get underway on Saturday. Will be Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. You're going to get a new champ. Obviously, you're going to get Connor McDavid in a national spotlight, which is good. Really weird bit where Edmonton scored just 2 goals on just 10 shots last night. That is a wild bit. Great goalie play. Connor McDavid in a big national spotlight moment. That's cool for hockey. That's a good thing for hockey, that you've got the spotlight and you've got a young superstar that maybe isn't a household name just yet in that spot. I think that's very good for the sport. I think it should be a very compelling series. So, I spent a little more time watching hockey this round than I had been able to the first few rounds, and look forward to Edmonton and Florida in the Stanley Cup Final. Orioles tonight open up a series in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Let's head north of the border. Always a pleasure to be joined by the play-by-play voice of the Toronto Blue Jays, a man you know from all the college hoops he does, and he's done baseball for ESPN over the years too. He is our friend, Mr. Dan Shulman, and he is back with us now here on GCR. Dan, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to catch up with you, man. Thank you for taking the time for us this morning.
You got it, Glenn. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Hey, Dan, before I get into this series and where the Blue Jays are, can you answer a question for me? There is this, like, belief in the States that if there's a Canadian team in the Stanley Cup Final, that, like, all of Canada embraces them to try to end this streak and finally bring the Stanley Cup back north of the border. But then I think about the idea of, like, you know, a similar scenario, not quite the same, but, like, that would require Orioles fans to, like, root for the Red Sox, and that sounds like like that would be nuts. Why would anyone ever do that? Is that actually true, that the entire country would, like, embrace the Oilers, or would, like, Maple Leafs fans say, the hell with that, we don't want a Canadian team to win it, we just want our team to win it?
Right. It's a little half and half. So I want the Oilers to win it. I would like to see the Cup come back to Canada. But if it were Montreal or Ottawa, I don't think I would feel that way from Toronto. So, Connor McDavid is just a generational talent. Zach Hyman, who plays for the Oilers, used to play for the Leafs, and I actually know Zach a little bit, so I root for him. So I'm rooting for them, but I don't know if, like, people in Calgary, I don't think are rooting for Edmonton, if you get my drift.
Right, like
and if it were Toronto, they hate each other.
Yeah.
And if it were the Maple Leafs in the final, nobody else in Canada would be rooting for them other than Toronto fans. So it's a little bit yes and no all at the same time.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it's one of those things where after it's over, you could say, like, yeah, I guess it's good that the Cup came back to Canada, but, like, you know, there's no chance I'm actually openly rooting for these people to do it. Right. That makes all the sense in the world. Dan, I keep trying to figure out the Blue Jays. I keep, like, they seem to have the pieces. They seem to have done so many things right as an organization, and in moments it feels like they're a team that's starting to put things together, but it just, for whatever reason, why have they not been able to sustain consistency this season?
You know, it's funny because every radio interview I do starts off with basically the exact same thing that you've just said, because it's people are trying to figure out this team, and it's not only people in Baltimore and other cities around the U.S., it's people in Toronto too. So I will tell you this. I don't think this team is as talented as the Blue Jays were the last 3 years. Like in 2021, they had the best or second or third best offense in baseball. 2022 as well. You know, they got an extraordinary year from Marcus Semien in 21. He's not here anymore. Teoscar Hernandez was traded. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. was traded. They tried to kind of change the look of the team a little bit more, get some left-handed bats, get better defensively, and they sacrificed offense to get it. And I think if you look at this roster, it's not quite as strong as it was the last 3 years. Now, should they be better than 28-30? No question about it. But should they have a 37-20 record like the Orioles do? I don't think so. I think the Orioles are a better team right now than the Blue Jays are. And that can change. The Blue Jays could play great. But, in terms of specifics, why they're not doing better, they're not hitting very much. I mean, you look at Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s numbers, they're good. He's a very good hitter, but he's only got 5 home runs. Bo Bichette's got 4 home runs. He's not having a great year. George Springer is starting to come around, but he had a really rough month. He's got 4 home runs. Justin Turner had a great 3 weeks at the beginning of the year and is now 8 for his last 80. Like, he is really struggling. They're really relying on, quote unquote, complementary players like Davis Schneider and Danny Jansen and Dalton Varsho and recently Daniel Vogelbach. Like, these guys are helping a lot, but they need their big boys to be their big boys and to to hit for power and drive and run. So that's the biggest reason. The second reason would be the pitching, which was great last year, has not been great this year. And I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to stabilize, but it hasn't been quite as good as it was last year. So, it's a combination in my mind of they're not quite as talented. They're a year older in a lot of spots. It's actually a pretty old roster. And then the biggest thing is, for reasons unknown, some of the key guys just aren't hitting like they have in the past.
I know that it was addressed recently, the idea of them trading away like the big pieces. You bring up Guerrero, Bichette, and Ross Atkins shot that down pretty quickly. But I guess the conversation has to be had, right? Like, they're not terrible, but given the difficulty of the AL East, like, Jordan Romano is going to be an interesting name. I know he just went on the injured list, but he'll be an interesting name. Are they going to have to be thinking about those things? Like, are they going to have to make some sort of, dramatic decisions? Maybe it's the future of John Schneider. I don't know what it is in the coming weeks or months.
It's possible. I mean, what cures all is winning, right? If they play well and get back into it, then everything is fine. But realistically, the division is out of reach. Realistically, the top wild card spot is out of reach, although you never know. But they're fighting for like the third, maybe second wild card spot, and they got to pass a few teams to do that. So if they don't do that, then I think they will have to confront some very hard decisions. This is a big payroll, like $230 million. They invested a lot of money in this team, but which probably makes it harder to say, hey, it didn't work. We got to make some significant changes. But I hope John Schneider is not in trouble. I don't think he deserves to be in trouble. I think he's a very good manager, and I don't think he's responsible for most of what's going on with this team. In terms of making trades, if they get to July and the next kind of 5-6 weeks of their schedule, with the exception of a series in Oakland, and, watch me have to walk those words back, but it's very tough. After the Orioles, it's Cleveland and Boston and Milwaukee, and then they go out west to play Seattle and San Francisco. It's hard. Like there aren't that many gimmies. They just came out of maybe the softest part of their schedule all year, a 13-game stretch, and they went 8-5, and that's fine. But you'd like to see 9-4, 10-3, whatever. But if they get to July and they're not in it, there will be some hard decisions to make. Yusei Kikuchi's a free agent at the end of the year. Danny Jansen is a free agent at the end of the year. So I think those are two guys that people would be calling about. Romano's got one more year. Guerrero's got one more year. Bichette's got one more year. Chris Bassett's got one more. And then Kevin Gausman, George Springer have 2 more. Older guys like Kiermaier and Turner, they're on one-year deals. So they would obviously not be part of the plan in 2025 if this team isn't a contender. But I think you're looking at, sure, you got to very seriously consider trading guys whose contracts are up at the end of this year. Bo and Vladdy, that's the $1 million question. I don't have the answer. As you said, Ross Atkins shot it down yesterday. Who knows what the next couple of months will bring. Dan
Shulman is with us. We're getting ready for Orioles Blue Jays starting tonight in Toronto. Dan, Kevin Gausman, I look at the numbers and I say, boy, those aren't like Kevin Gausman-like numbers. And then I dive into the game log a little bit, and it looks like it's just like 2 or 3 bad starts, that mostly Kevin Gausman has still been the guy that felt like was very much worthy of the big money that the Blue Jays paid for him. Just sort of weird that he's had a few of those blips on the radar. Is that fair?
Yeah, I don't think he's peak Kevin Gausman, and peak Kevin Gausman is Cy Young finalist Kevin Gausman. So he had a shoulder issue in the spring. They called it shoulder fatigue. And he had his first outing, which I think was on like a minor league game or a backfield or something, and he didn't bounce back great, and they shut him down. And he only pitched in one spring training game. That was in the last week of spring training. He pitched in Bradenton. So if you see his first major league start was only this year, regular season start, I should say, was only 4 1/3, I think. And they bumped him back to like the 4th or 5th game of the season to give him some extra time. So he was behind. And he said as recently as like 10 days ago, in hindsight, he probably should have started the year on the IL, but he didn't want to do that to the team. So he had his ups and downs early. The velocity came and went. The command came and went. And some of the starts weren't vintage Kevin Gausman. He's coming off back-to-back starts of 6 innings, 1 run, I believe. Now, one was against the Tigers. One was against the White Sox. Neither of those teams hit nearly as well as the Orioles, as you well know. So this is going to be a big challenge for any pitcher going up against Baltimore. But he's good. He's fine. Like if you're doing a list of problems the Blue Jays had, you have to get way down the list to get to Kevin Gausman.
No, I think that's fair to say. And obviously, I think that nobody in Baltimore is thrilled that that's who they got to match up with tonight. It's just, that's everybody here knows. Everybody here knows the story. A guy that spent far less time with the Orioles or around the Orioles was Zach Pop. I feel like he's kind of settled in nicely, right?
Zach Pop is a really interesting guy out of the bullpen. He's firstly, he's a Canadian kid. He's from Brampton, Ontario, about 30 minutes northwest of Toronto. So we always like that. That's kind of cool. But he is a guy who's been, along with Nate Pearson, these two guys have become pretty big parts of the bullpen because, as you mentioned earlier, Jordan Romano was on the IL. Eric Swanson has had a rough start to the year. He's been sent down to Buffalo, to AAA, and he was like their 8th inning guy last year. So Pearson and Pop are not only in the bullpen, they're getting leverage innings. Yimi Garcia is the closer right now. He was the 8th inning guy or the put out the fire guy before Romano went on the IL, but he's the closer now. They've got Chad Green, who you know well from years and years with the Yankees and now the Blue Jays. Trevor Richards, who's kind of the glue, the unsung hero guy of the bullpen. And then Pop and Pearson, both who have big-time stuff and are still refining it, their pitch usage, their command, their location, their sequencing. When they're on, they can both be lights out, but it's like 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 instead of 5 out of 6 or 6 out of 7. They're just looking for more consistency, but you will definitely see both Pop and Pearson in big spots in this series.
I should clean up for everybody. I know Zach Pop never pitched for the Orioles. He was in the system because he was part of the Manny Machado trade, and a name that we were following that we thought that ended up going to the Marlins and then ultimately to the Blue Jays. Dan Shulman, before I let you go, if I could, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you for a Bill Walton story. I'm sure it's all you've been doing for the last week is telling people stories. But is there one in particular that you've defaulted to in talking about Bill this last week?
It's funny. I have been asked on several occasions. I actually didn't work with Bill. I mean, we both worked at ESPN,
really?
But he worked with.
Man.
Yeah, no, I worked with Vital for a zillion years,
right.
And with Billis, and I'm mostly like ACC and SEC and Big 12, and Bill is Pac-12, West Coast. So right. Bill worked with Dave Pash and Jason Benetti when he was with us, and Roxy Bernstein. So the only time I would see Bill every year is he did the Maui Invitational and I did the Maui Invitational, but we had 2 crews. I would be with Jay Billis and he would be with whether it was Pash or Roxy or whomever. So we would spend a couple of days together kind of watching practices before, and just an enormous personality, incredibly popular, gregarious guy. The coaches flocked to him, the players flocked to him, the media flocked to him. And a guy who obviously loved life as much as anybody that I've ever met. So, I wish I had known him better, but actually didn't know him all that well. But, he was a treasure, a phenomenal player. Like the younger generation,
right.
Hardly knows how good of a player he was, right? But and then as unique a broadcaster as there's ever been. So, a huge loss for the basketball world.
I apologize, Dan. I could have sworn, man. In my mind.
No, all good.
In my mind, Dan. Really
happy to talk to him, even though I didn't work with him.
I understand. At @DShulman_ESPN is how you follow him on Twitter. Dan, appreciate taking the time for us as always this morning, man. Thanks so much for doing this.
You got it. Have a good one.
Dan Shulman, play-by-play voice of the Toronto Blue Jays. I would have almost bet my life that at some point Dan Shulman and Bill Walton worked. They've just been such a. This is what's the effect where
Mandela
effect. Thank you. Where you're convinced of something It's the Sinbad was in a movie called Kazam that everybody's like convinced was a thing, and it was never a thing. 100% Mandela effect here. Like I would have bet my life that at some point Dan Shulman and Bill Walton were partners, just because I associate both of them with college basketball so significantly. I can't believe it. And by the way, I just searched like Shulman Walton on Twitter. They did have a picture of the two of them together at like a high school event. Somebody did, but it's wild, man. Wow. I just learned something today. All right, let's go 3 Up and 3 Down. 3 Up and 3 Down is brought to you today by the print issue of Press Box. Final weeks for you to get this print issue of Press Box before it is gone. Daddy gone. The love is gone. Grayson Rodriguez is on the cover. Great cover story from our own Luke Jackson. Go pick up this print issue of Press Box today at your neighborhood Royal Farms, any of the hundreds of locations around town where you can find Press Box. All right.
3 Up.
We gotta. I told you we gotta redo this. We gotta redo this. It's not. We're not gonna stay committed.
Redo it how?
We need to get to that part quicker.
Well, you gotta have the full chant.
We just don't need
the full organ.
We don't need. And it's supposed to be 3 up and 3 down.
I'll add the and.
It's supposed to be 3 up and 3 down. All right, whatever. Fine. Here, let's get to it. 3 up and 3 down for the week. The Orioles go 4 up and 2 down this week, taking 2 out of 3 from both the Red Sox and the Rays at home, which, you know, in all reasonable worlds, this is a good week. In a world in which the New York Yankees
don't lose ever,
just refuse to lose ever, you have lost ground. There's no way around it. That's the reality for the Orioles. Is the Yankees are just at an insane pace right now, and once Aaron Judge got going, that duo of Aaron Judge and Juan Soto is effing lethal. I mean, lethal. But if there's good news, the Yankees are apparently a poverty franchise that can't afford to have ball players moving forward. So maybe it'll just be a one-year thing for that, and then they'll.
Wait, what do you mean? What?
Hal Steinbrenner said a couple weeks ago, like, we just can't pay money for players like this moving forward.
Well, I mean, they're going to win every game, I guess.
Real shame that the Yankees have decided they're a poverty franchise. They're a mid-market team moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
So they're going to be like trading everybody this offseason?
I don't know. I don't know what the plan is, but I think that everybody has worked on the assumption they're not signing Juan Soto. Like, this is just a rental for Juan Soto, which, again, is working out quite well for them, but we'll see.
It hasn't taken long to dislike Juan Soto.
Does not take long, does it? All right, let's get into it. 3 up and 3 down. Who are the 3 Orioles most deserving of praise? Who are the 3 Orioles most deserving of scorn for the week? The up was a little bit tough because everyone hit last week. Everyone did. You had to nitpick, and there was one pitcher that I for sure wanted to put on the list. You had to nitpick in terms of which hitters got on the list and which didn't. So, in part because of the value of him getting things turned around potentially, but also because I thought some of his numbers were better than some of the other guys that were in the conversation. Like, it was tough for me to leave Jordan Westberg off the list. Every week it's difficult to leave Gunnar Henderson off the list. It's very difficult. But Gunnar Henderson struck out a lot this week, like a lot. Anthony Santander is my number 3 for the week. Anthony Santander, again, part of it is just the inherent value of him getting going. Like, that it's not the entire outfield that becomes a vast empty spot in your lineup. Part of it is the value of him getting going, but part of it also is just what he did this week. Anthony Santander had a really, really good week, and was highly productive, and I'm encouraged by the turnaround that you see for Anthony Santander. So Anthony Santander is my number 3.
Yeah, I had a tough time as well, trying to pick the up guys. Santander did not make my list. I mean, he and several others obviously deserved to, but I ended up going 2 pitchers and 1 hitter, and so my number 3.
And Santander, by the way, he played in 5 games for the week. And
7 for 19, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I hate when they reset the stats because I haven't had a chance to write them all down. But yes, went 7 for 19.
He went. He had a 955 OPS in 5 games.
Very good.
Yes, he was. But I went with my number 3, the guy who I thought the other night should have been the man of the match, Corbin Burns. I thought he was just, he was Corbin Burns.
Corbin Burns is higher on my list.
And well, I've had 2 guys higher than him. Yeah. Just going 7 innings, I guess, just because we don't see Orioles pitchers do that very often. It was just very impressive, and the way he did it too, just having to kind of bear down
also don't
in that 7th
get grand
inning.
slams very often either. Like
those
that's part of the problem when you have a game like that where you have those two.
Gunnar, but he's Gunnar.
I get it. Well, Corbin Burns is Corbin Burns. Corbin Burns is my number 2 on my list, and Corbin Burns went. That was awesome. That kicked ass. That's what I got for you. Corbin Burns is number 2 on my list.
My number 2 was Ryan Mountcastle. He was my number 2. I have 1 pitcher higher. But yeah, Mountcastle was.
Wow.
He's just scorching. It's I like.
Ryan Mountcastle is number 1 on my list.
I wanted to go with the pitching, so I have Cole Irvin as my number 1. And I may have to find a way to recalibrate. But when pitchers make 2 starts in a week, and since we're looking at just the week, and he was great in both of them.
He was good,
and he's a great guy, helping the community
I love
too.
that. That I'm all in on.
Hard to
I'm
ignore
all
that as
in
well.
on what Cole Irvin is doing for the community.
It was just a great week for Cole Irvin all the way
I'm
around.
all in
every
on
facet.
Cole Irvin helping the animals. That part I love. The part that was I couldn't put him on the list is he actually put a lot of guys on base. Because again, he put a lot of guys on base. He gave up 7 base runners against the Red Sox, and then he gave up 9 against the Rays. So that's 16 over 11 and 3rd innings. Like that's a bad whip.
His whip was 1.4. Yeah, his whip was 1.4 in the week.
Was it 1.4 even, or was it closer to 1.5?
It was 1.41.
I thought it was closer to 1.5. I don't know why I thought it was 1. Where are you getting this that they don't update?
So I go to StatMuse. And if you
go, you can put in the
you
2
can
dates.
put in Orioles pitcher stats since May 27th.
Can you do it with hitters too?
Yeah, you can. Yes.
Because they for whatever stupid reason, MLB.com updates the last 7 days, like in the middle. At like 11 a.m. on Monday. So I do I pick my guys, I go over the whole thing, and then I go to write it out, and then the stats have been updated, and they cut out last Monday's game.
In your defense, I didn't figure this out until like last week that I could do
this. This is helpful, and I would like to know this so that I can.
I'll send you the link every Sunday night.
I appreciate that.
We just update it as the week goes.
Yeah.
Since June 3rd.
So yeah, I love Cole Irvin. I am all in. I've got a bit of a crush on Cole Irvin. I am so enamored with what
Maybe
he's
I'm
doing.
too biased. That's the problem.
I'm so enamored with Cole Irvin, but in being unbiased
and given Wells and Means
I get
going
it.
down for the year
I
officially,
understand
I understand him stepping up. I
get
big
that.
Deal.
I understand all of it, but I can't.
And this is just who Ryan Mountcastle is now. He's going to be 50
is that
for
what
the
it
rest
is?
of the year, so.
That would be wonderful. All right, 3 down for the week. I begin with my number 3. Again, this is such a difficult. I don't like doing 3 down. I would rather we just stop doing 3 down. Let's just do 3 up.
It's your segment.
Look, man, I'll revisit it when we get to number 1. The biggest argument for why you don't give Cedric Mullins a break is because the guy that you would default to be the center fielder, you can't justify. It pains me that Colton Cowser is struggling the way that he's struggling. And I don't know what you do about it. I don't know if the answer is that, Hayes should be playing every day again because obviously he has not been hitting righties at all this season. So I don't think he's the answer to move into being like an everyday center fielder. I don't know what you do about this. Because it really does feel like you're at a breaking point with one of these guys. We'll get back to him. But, like, the other center field specific options are not desirable. I guess you could platoon Hayes and Cowser in center. I don't know what you do. It was another brutal week for Colton Cowser.
Yeah, it was, and I ended up leaving him off of my list just barely.
I think you're biased here too.
You think so?
I really do. I think you love Moo.
I do like
we've
Moo.
We've been through this before. I think that you love Moo,
but
you love Cal.
He's doing better than the other guy. He's still doing better than the other guy that's going to be on the list.
Well, that guy.
Yeah.
Sure, but that's a very low bar.
It is a very low bar. But like he got on base a little bit this week still.
A little bit. A little.
The other guy didn't.
You keep coming back to the. There's 3 guys on the list, Griffin. It's not one.
It's because this guy's wasting a roster spot. There's no reason for him to be on the roster. Thiago Vieira, and he was awful. Awful.
I can't even.
I know. Like, I don't know if should I not be wasting time on him? Probably not. But he was awful, and he's just wasting a roster spot.
I can't do it.
It makes no sense.
This is very much like you're not even an Oriole. Like I can't even put you in the list of consideration.
That's why he's number 3 on the list.
I understand. I measured the real Orioles. This one is also painful because he's great, but I can't ignore it. Kyle Bradish was terrible on Saturday. It was awful. Sorry. I mean, like it's a bummer because Kyle Bradish is a major part of the solution for the Baltimore Orioles, but he was wretched on Saturday. Kyle Bradish is number 2.
Keegan Aiken was not good in his.
It's funny you say that because there's been a lot of not good, but this week there were only 2 appearances, and one of them was good. Like I don't think I could say.
Yeah.
I definitely when I was thinking about who, because I go in with a biased opinion of who I want to have on my 3 up and 3 down, then I use the numbers to does it back up the way that I feel, or do I feel like an idiot afterwards? It was like that Ramon Arias column from last summer when I wanted to write my love letter to Ramon Arias, and then I looked at the numbers and I was like, oh, God. I go in biased, and Keegan Aiken was on my list to start the day, and then I looked at the numbers and I said, no, I can't justify Keegan Aiken this week.
And I guess I was still carrying over from Chicago.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I think,
but still, it's a reminder of what Keegan Aiken is, and he's unreliable at best. Like,
I agree with the sentiment, but not for 3 up, 3 down. Like, I think if you were having an overall look at Keegan Aiken, like if we were just having a Keegan Aiken conversation, I completely agree with you. 100% I agree with you. But an actual tangible, what the rules of this game are, that it's specifically about that week of games and what the players did in that week of games. Yes, he had a bad outing against Boston, but it wasn't a miserable outing against Boston. It was a bad outing against Boston, and he had a good outing this weekend. So there's not enough there for him to be on the list ahead of some other people. Like, Vieira, fine. I acknowledge I'm just not even considering him as an Oriole. Like, I can't even. It's very much I'm not even supposed to be here today type of situation, right? Like it's very much Dante from Clerks, but I tried with Keegan Aiken. I wanted him to be on the list, and I just
not even supposed to be here today.
We nailed it. We are killing it when it comes to sounds. Just really,
it's all over.
Really, that's our next level that we've gotten to on GCR. I keep convincing myself one day we will add sounds into the conversation. And it's just not
I have sounds, yeah.
Yeah. How we do?
Oh.
That one.
Big national.
There have been some. The
analysts.
problem is like there were a lot on the radio show. Like there was a thing from the XFL last weekend where a center walked over to the sideline and said, "My ass is not this wet," to his quarterback, and like you just what?
God. Oh, that's so gross.
So weird. Anyway, number 1 for me this week. And look, that's what it is. Cedric Mullins is obviously number 1. There's no, and this is the breaking point. It is for me, and I get it. It's complicated, but because you wanted to default a week ago, it was all right. Just I get why there's reluctance to default to everyday Colton Cowser right now. Like I get it. He is not performing at a way that justifies every day, and the flip side argument is, well, you just got to you're letting Cedric Mullins work through it. Why not let Colton Cowser? And that might ultimately be the answer. I do think that you're at the point where you've just got to do something else. He made a nice play, obviously, yesterday. Some debate about how necessary the jump was. I don't know.
It was necessary.
I think it was. It was close.
It was an incredible catch.
It was a very good catch. There's no doubt.
Maybe can we have him talk to Chris Davis or something and
about what?
I don't know, how to.
He never got out of it, dude.
He never got out of it.
What in the world?
But the way he Chris Davis is the only person I saw slam a bat into the ground and snap it.
Okay.
So I didn't know Cedric Mullins had that much strength.
Okay.
I just thought that was Chris Davis is just one of the strongest humans ever.
Yeah, I would like to have him talk to somebody who came out from it on the other side.
Do those guys exist?
I don't know. I don't know specifically who that guy is, but yeah,
it's
awful.
hard to watch.
Yep, awful. So yeah, he's number 1. All right, we'll get updated season totals. Did you add in last week's?
I did, yeah.
Okay, good. We'll get updated season totals up at glennclarkradio.com here in a bit. We come back in. It's been a little while since we caught up with Jeremy Conn. We'll do that next.
The ultimate fan experience awaits you at Sports and Social Maryland. See how we're raising the sports bar with our massive 100-foot media wall featuring 40 HD TVs and a 47-foot big screen. Bet on your favorite teams and this year's biggest events at the FanDuel Sportsbook while enjoying your favorite beers and cocktails, plus our delicious takes on bar food classics. Visit Sports and Social at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland at Arundel Mills. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Hagerstown, Maryland, a snapshot of American history that dates back centuries. Today, the roots of the city expand with another historical moment, the grand opening of Meredith Park, Hagerstown's new event stadium and home to the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Experience the energy, culture, and adventure. Plan your getaway today at America's newest and most innovative ballpark. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland. Visit Hagerstown.com.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
The Toyota Tacoma comes in a range of models and trim lines, so you can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
The Ed Block Courage Award Foundation has been working in partnership with the NFL for 46 years to support abused, neglected, and at-risk youth across the country, partnering each team with a children's facility or program that supports the well-being of those in need. Annually, one player from each team is selected by their peers to receive the Courage Award for their inspiration on and off the field. Learn more about how the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation makes a difference, and be sure to check out their latest podcast and web series episodes at edblock.org.
Coming back in here with Glenn and the other guy, Garrett, whatever his name is. You know who they are.
All right, back in here on GCR as we continue along on a Monday edition of the program. High school sports season might be over, but all summer long you're going to be able to find all of the updates and the information for specifically high school football, all the previews, all summer long. You'll be able to get that at County Sports Zone, countysports.zone, which is proudly sponsored by your local Toyota dealer and buyatoyota.com. Again, countysports.zone, all summer long, updates, previews, get you ready for high school football season in the fall. It is a Monday. It's been a little while since we've caught up with our next guest. He was out on a spaceship, and then we were off last week. It's good to get caught back up with our friend Jeremy Conn, who's with us now here on GCR. Jeremy, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Yeah, when Griffin called me, I was going to be like, new phone, who did? I felt like we haven't talked in forever.
How was your trip?
It's amazing, man. Just to kind of give you the brief synopsis, that Sunday, I went 5-0. One of my clients said he won $35,000, so it made me feel awesome that day. Going to see a band I was listening to when Mo passed, and another band that opened up for him, that in Judah and the Lion. That's like, it's just really positive stuff, good music, people dancing, singing, having a good time. And I just felt like, I'm not very spiritual, I'm not religious, but that day just felt like me. I don't know. It sounds weird, just kind of saying goodbye to Mo, you know, and letting some of that stuff go. So I feel like it was a really good trip. It did me a lot of good. And I had fun. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I know you've been through a lot. I really am happy to hear that. I also was really moved by everything that was done. For those that maybe don't follow Sanzi or anybody on Facebook, I was really moved by how much the schools did. This would have been Mo's high school graduation year, and they really did a lot to recognize and celebrate Mo over the course of the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, they had a banner hung up honoring him. There were kids that were taking pictures with his cutout as they were graduating, kids that were in school with him. And I'm sure it's got to be so surreal because did you ever have anybody pass in your class when you were in school?
We did. We had a couple of kids. But not, it's funny, Jeremy. Nobody that I was very, I went to Perry Hall, so we had a graduating class of 700 kids.
Yeah.
Nobody that I was very close with, but certainly, there were some emotions around, graduation because we were thinking about those guys.
Yeah, there were two. So I only had 128 kids in my graduating class in Hartford Tech. And my freshman year, the girl that sat next to me on the bus, we didn't see her for a week, and then we found out she died in a fire. And one of my high school basketball teammates died of a heroin overdose when he was 16. And I just remember those two. The girl that sat next to me on the bus, I didn't talk to her all that much. She was really quiet. But it's kind of one of those things I'm just trying to think of it from the other kids' perspectives and growing up and seeing some of the kids that I saw when he was in 8th grade and seeing them as adults now almost, or 18 years old. So the whole thing's kind of strange to me, but I just thought Anne Arundel County, the school system, even a lot of the restaurants and places around the area just did a really cool thing, just celebrating him.
No, I loved it. I loved that, and I was appreciative of seeing it. Hey, before we get into sports topics, I want to present something. So I was at a wedding on Saturday, and it was beautiful, and I had a conversation with some friends of mine, and I want to see if you can give context. There are two phases in your life where you genuinely love going to weddings. The first phase, it's somewhere in your 20s, maybe early 30s, when a wedding is really like a weekend. You're going to make a weekend out of it. You're going to go stay at the hotel. You're going to go get ripped, and you're going to just go crazy. You're going to lose 10 pounds sweating on the dance floor. You're going to try to hook up with a bridesmaid. It's everything. You plan and prepare for that wedding for a long time. And then I feel like you get to a phase in your life where you're of an age where your friends' kids getting married is your social calendar, right? That's the only time you're going to go out and there's a time in between those two things. And I was trying to do the math, and I was talking to everybody. Where does phase 1 end, and when does phase 2 begin? What are the lines of demarcation for the first phase of your life where you love weddings, and then the next phase of your life when you love weddings?
Well, see, I think I got a couple of things on this with wedding. So I've always kind of liked weddings.
I enjoy. I want to be clear. I'm not in either phase right now. I still enjoy weddings. It's just not the same, right? I can tell it's something different that I'm not. I don't know how to say it, right?
Yeah. Have you ever been a best man?
No, I've never been a best man. I've been a groomsman. I've been a bridesmaid multiple times. But
very nice.
My childhood best friend passed away, and then I've never been a best man.
So it's always been weird for me because my childhood friends, we all got married. We all picked different people to be our best men, and then I didn't get picked in that group, which was fine because where we were at in our lives at different times, people were closer to other people. I was invited to be in the wedding. I've been in so many weddings, it's ridiculous. But I've been in 2 of my own, but
they say, of course, the third time is the charm. So
yeah, I tell my wife that all the time. But no, I've never been a best man, and it's weird. My longtime best friend now is he's single. One of my other really close friends got married, and people were like, "Oh, are you going to be his best man?" I said, "I don't know, but you pick people that meant something. My best man at my wedding with Katie is my guy Nate, I was playing basketball with him, and I remember when I went through a hard breakup, he was always there. So that's why, anyway, long story short, when you start talking about weddings, I think you're right in your 20s, especially if your friends are starting to get married, because for me, a lot of it happened early. And then I think it's probably around, you're right, in your 40s when you start looking forward to going back to it, because now this is friends' kids that are getting married or acquaintances. You know what I mean? It's kind of, it's a little bit different.
Realize that you don't go out otherwise. And that's why I'm not in that phase yet. I'm in the in-between
phase. Oh, I got you with that. Yeah.
I'm saying I think you enter a phase at a certain, I don't know what the line is where like you're either going to go out to a wedding or you're not. Like you're not going out and ripping it up at bars. You're not doing that anymore. Like that's when you start going out again. And I just
see, but I think you start day drinking at that point, don't you?
That's everybody keeps telling me that because Jeremy, I stopped drinking for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody keeps telling me, hey, dude, when your kids reach a certain age, you're going to want to spend your Sunday afternoon out drinking with your friends again. Like once everybody's kids are old enough and they've moved on, you're gonna hit that part of your life again. And I believe that's possible. Like I really do believe that could come in my life. I've said like I'm not drinking right now, but I'm not saying I'll never drink again. I do think that you're gonna get to that point at some point.
See, and you know what's funny too? Like just going back to the wedding thing, a thing I love and a thing I hate. Like if I ever get to be a best man at a wedding, I'm going to give the most epic effing speech ever.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to work so hard on that damn thing.
Yeah.
There'll be so many jokes in there. That's what I want.
Do you judge speeches?
If they're really bad, if somebody didn't put any prep into it, like I'm okay if you're winging it, if it's good, but like if you just got drunk and went up there and reiterate the same things over and over again, the best speech I ever saw was somebody took the speech from Any Given Sunday and made it into the wedding.
That's pretty great.
And it was really effing cool because like I'm smiling and kind of standing up and looking around the room because this is a wedding in Boston where I know no one except my wife. And I'm like, does anybody else get it? I know what's happening here, and it's just not. And by the way, my least favorite thing at weddings is when they introduce the bridal party and everybody's got to do some stupid dance. I effing hate that.
Oh,
because it's all been done. It's all been done.
There's nothing original. By the way, bless the wedding that we were at Saturday. They didn't even bother to go through the motions of that. I will say that there was one time when I was because I've been a bridesmaid in multiple weddings. One time when I was a bridesmaid and I had to walk in with a dude, right? Like that's just the way that it works. We weren't going to do some silly dance. We just decided to play leapfrog all the way in, and that I actually thought was good. I was proud of the leapfrog entrance into the wedding. The other thing I would say, the argument that was made to me when I was having this conversation on Saturday is that you move out of phase one after your wedding, right? That like your wedding is the last one. That when you're in that phase of like weddings are the event, they're the weekend, they're the, I made the
wedding.
Okay, yeah, I don't know. I don't know which one for you because you got married really young, right?
Yeah, I got married. I was
you probably were still in phase one.
22.
Yeah, you were probably still in phase one after your first wedding. I'm going to guess that for you it probably would have been your second wedding. I got married at 30. I was 30 when I got married. So That's do think that it probably lines up that was about when I moved out of phase one. The joke is that like at a certain age, a wedding becomes an excuse for you to do literally anything. Like anything at all. If you tried mescaline for the first time, and somebody's like, dude, did you do mescaline? And you're like, yo, bro, it was Brian's wedding. And you're like, all right, we get it. It's like, we understand. Like, did you start a war in Crimea? Like, yeah, but you got to understand it was Dave's wedding. Like, okay. Like when you're a younger person, when you're in your 20s or early 30s, wedding weekends are like supposed to be that there's supposed to be a story of you getting beat up by a UFC fighter because you were hitting on his wife at the wedding. Like there's supposed to be stories like that when you go to weddings. But at some point that ends, and the argument that was made to me was that it ends at your own wedding.
Well, it does because like now, for me, I was the guy that tore my pants at 7 consecutive weddings, whether I was in the wedding or just.
Cal Ripken thinks that's an incredible streak.
Yeah, and even the one picture I have online where we were at Ripken Stadium for actually the guy that was the best man at my first wedding. We were at his wedding, and like I was doing stretches, joking around about the guys like, hey, when you walk out, make sure you're limber. You got to do this. And as soon as I leaned down, my pants exploded. And I went, oh, my God. And then my buddy, once we got on the dance floor, just started ripping my pants off me. He ripped them all the way down the inner thigh to where they had to be stapled. And so, like, when I went to, by the way, as a rental, when I went to return it, the guy was like, I've never seen anything like this. What is this? Like, he was so surprised. I didn't even have the heart to explain it to him. But, that was the thing for me.
No, and that's the point. You're supposed to have that type of story. A couple of buddies of mine and I ended up going, the night before our friend Aaron's wedding, we went to Top Golf dressed up as sexy cops. Like, that you're supposed to do that type of crap on wedding weekends. Like, it's the way it's supposed to be. Is just that's the reason why The Hangover was a thing. Like, you're supposed to have epic wedding-related stories. But then one day, that just ends. And going to a wedding is just going to a wedding, which is still great because you get to spend time with your friends and you're happy for the people involved and the whole deal. But it's not like, again, you're not starting a war. You're not going to end up doing those things and having those epic stories. And I felt that a little bit this weekend when I was like, wow, we're just going to the wedding. Like, we're not really making a week out of it.
So can I ask you something about the wedding?
Yes.
Was it two men in the wedding?
Yes. It was our friends Kyle and Joe got married on Saturday, and it was awesome. I will tell you,
pictures were great.
Jeremy, I will tell you, there was a really cool and like poignant moment that struck with me. I will tell everybody this was the first time I actually been to a gay wedding.
I've never been.
So I could not love these guys. Kyle has been a friend for forever, and then he started dating Joe, and Joe rules. Like Joe, I think ran like the marching band at Towson University for years, and like was a beloved figure there. Like every time I meet someone from Towson University, they're like, "Dude, you're friends with Joe Bateman?" I'm like, kind of. Like,
who's the lucky one there then?
Oh my God, Kyle. This is a straight shoot, Jeremy. We were all one night doing a little bit too much drinking, and we did a bit like, who's wifed up the best? Like who's, and like we were all like looking, and we totally were like, oh my God, it was Kyle. Like Joe is the winner here. Like it's unreal how great that dude is. But
no, and again, this wasn't something where I was trying to make fun. I'm genuinely curious because I've never been to a gay wedding.
Okay.
Like, how do they set up the groom and bride? Is it like groom and like? Is it?
Well, okay. So we tried having some fun with Kyle about this. Like we were like, hey, who's wearing the garter? Like who's gonna, how we doing this? Like was one of us? Does somebody have to go up your leg to get the garter down? And like he kept reminding us, no, it's non-traditional. It's not. But what's the funny part is like. It was way more of a religious ceremony than like my wedding was. Like,
oh wow!
They had a clergyman there, and there was like a prayer, and the whole like it was a way more religious ceremony than my own wedding. Was.
And good for them, man. Because I get tired of that. Like I'm not religious. I say this all the time, but I was religious when I was younger. I've definitely read and studied enough about things that I know enough. And my whole thing about when it comes down to religion, especially with a gay marriage, like. Everybody has their interpretation of what their book means, what their God says. You know what I mean? And like the big problem I had when I posted my, happy Pride Month to everyone, and I hope it makes, and it made like it's this back and forth that I have with friends and people I don't know. And I said, look, it's fine to start a conversation about it, but like if you don't understand what Pride Month is, like for me, it's letting people know, like, hey, you got an issue. I'm one that you can come talk to. Like you never have to be worried around me, and that's the whole point of it.
Correct.
Doesn't make me gay. I mean, other things make me gay, but not that.
I was going to say, I know you. I know you. Wait. Yeah. What we did during wedding weekend was what made you gay. That was the.
I love show tunes. I love Bette Midler. I love sucking. Anyway, so
you know how I know you're gay? You have a Coldplay poster. Anyway, Jeremy Conn is. It was. I could not have had a better time. I swear to God, it was a beautiful, beautiful day, and love those guys, and I was so happy for them. And
how did the dances work? Is there a dad?
No, they both danced with their moms. They both danced with their moms at the reception, which was nice. And ironically, Joe's mom is a regular. Like she listens to. I don't think this show. I think she listens to the 105.7. I think she's a big Jeremy Conn fan too. I think she's like a station.
I love her already.
I know. She's awesome. She's awesome. They love them so much. And nobody was mad that I had the Orioles game on the entire time. Like that's become an awkward thing for me too with the Orioles being good is wherever I am. Dude, I went to see Dashboard Confessional on Friday night. I went to see Bush and Our Lady Peace yesterday at the Let's Go Festival down in Annapolis. And like the entire time I'm at like concerts now, I'm barely paying attention because I'm watching the Orioles game on my phone.
It's so interesting, man.
It's the thing. I'm so enamored. I'm so in on it. I don't want to miss anything. I don't want to be the guy that doesn't know what's going on.
So I feel like I was filling in on the You Better You Bet show on our AM airwaves. It's a national show. Yeah. And it's a gambling show. So we were talking about, we had to pick AL, NL, Rookie of the Year, Cy Young, and MVP. And when I started filling it out, I mean, AL Rookie of the Year is just wide open. Like there's nobody that's grabbing a hold of it. Everybody thought Mason Miller, he's given up some runs, whatever. But then I had Corbin Burns, Gunnar Henderson, and Colton Cowser, which I changed Colton Cowser in the end because I said, holy hell, I just picked 3 Orioles. And I'm so cognizant of what I'm doing. Like, but it wasn't ridiculous that I picked 3 Orioles for those 3 awards.
No.
You know what I mean? Like,
No.
and that's where I'm like, I was even telling the co-host, I said, I'm not being a homer. Go look at what these guys are doing.
I'm a little bit worried, right? We were talking about a couple of these things. I really am. I've finally reached a breaking point with Cedric, and I hate it. It pains me. I am obsessed Cedric Mullins fan, but
he robbed a home run this weekend.
He did.
So.
Even as but he also knocked Jorge Mateo out.
Well, that happens. That's also. Hey, I got Connor Norby called up.
Yeah, it's
Let's
true,
go.
and I think Connor Norby is overdue for being here. Frankly,
Yeah.
I'm in a weird place, right, where I love Cedric Mullins, and I understand why his defense is so good that they've continued to justify it. But I think we've reached the point of no return. Like, I really think we've reached you've got to do something, whether it's a mental health IL stint, whether it's if he's not willing to do that, then it's going to have to be an option because he still has an option available. Like, you can't keep throwing that out there every day and just hoping for the best. I'm there, and it's taken me longer than I think a lot of people have to get there. But like, this ain't a small sample size anymore. Like, there's a problem, and it's pretty clear that it's affecting him. And I get it. I appreciate in a weird way. Other people beat Brandon Hyde up for his like deference towards veterans. I appreciate that. I don't want it to be cartoonish. Like, that Buck had a thing where he thought, like, when Jim Thome showed up, that he was getting Jim Thome, right? Like when Vlad Guerrero signed with the Orioles, he genuinely believed that was Vlad Guerrero. I don't want it to be extraordinary, but I don't think there was any reason going into the season to think Cedric Mullins was on the downside of his career. Before he got hurt last year, he was the MVP of the team. He was responsible for all of the moments that you loved. But you can't ignore it now. It's this bad, and it's this unproductive.
Yeah, so Cedric Mullins was the one guy I said, look, I'm leaving him out there. I'm letting them figure it out. But ultimately, when you start getting back to it, you can't have a Cedric Mullins and Austin Hayes and, hey, look, depending on who it was that was caught up at the time, the way Jackson Holliday was hitting when he was up, Ramon, the way he was hitting before Jackson came up, like, you were having 2 and 3 of these guys in your lineup, and you can't have that. And even to a degree now, Ryan O'Hearn's numbers have come down just a bit. And I'm not saying he's slumping. It's just the ebbs and flows of baseball. But realistically, like, the defense you get from Ced, as long as everything else is okay out there, you can live with that. But you just can't have the other guys out there. And for me right now, it looks like it's going to be a platoon in left between Cowser and Hayes with lefty-righty.
Yep.
And I think that's great in the postseason if you have it, if Hayes is actually hitting a little bit. But, I mean, they're not. So there's a lot of tough decisions because we've fallen in love with these guys. But you can't tell me you can't upgrade at every spot in the outfield. Like, seriously, like, I think Santander's great.
Yeah.
I think Hayes is great and Mullins is great too, even though they're not hitting. But you can upgrade in every one of those spots. And here comes the problem is what do you want to do? Are you upgrading within and getting cheaper and spending that money elsewhere? I mean, there's all types of different things you can do here.
So a couple of things. One, I hope that Santander this past week was a sign of him turning things around because, they could.
Well, he's another one that wasn't hitting too.
Correct,
briefly,
at all.
Yeah.
The really difficult part about all this is, like, it would be easier to make a move on Mullins if Cowser was performing the way, not the way that he did the first couple of weeks of the season. He was never going to be able to, keep that up. That was insane. That's not. But he's been a real struggle for Cowser since then. Like, it's been. He's been hitting about 200 since then, and so that makes it more difficult to commit to him every day. I do want to see more Stowers. I do think that Heston Kjerstad deserves another shot, but none of this is easy. It doesn't clean up nicely. I just think the one thing that I finally said I'm comfortable with is Mullins. I do think the other interesting Orioles conversation is 5 days ago had no thought that they should be in the market for a starter at the deadline. They had plenty of them. It's weird to me how much, like, John Means was barely part of this, but yet it's a reminder of how quickly depth can go away. And while they had legitimately 7 viable starters a couple days ago, now all of a sudden I look and say, well, what happens if something else doesn't go right? Like, what happens if Dean Kramer doesn't come back from the injury and look right? What happens if Albert Suarez turns into a pumpkin at some point? Weirdly, just the injury to me, and knowing that, like, hey, guys get hurt sometimes after July 30th, and you don't have any recourse then. Like, if somebody gets hurt on September 1st, you can't trade for a solution that day. I am back into the belief that they should be looking into the starting pitcher market moving towards the trade deadline.
See, I'm okay with what they have, but you're right. If they lose another one, it's like, well, now you're dipping into the farm system because you have to, not because you want to, you know?
Yeah, you're trying to force
and like the weird thing about it is like Cade Povich is really close. I mean, I think there's a good chance he gets called up at some point with the fact that they have no off days here for a lengthy period of time. But I'd say in any playoff series, you'd be content with Bradish, Grayson, and Burns going into that series, and maybe Dean Kramer being your fourth if you had to go to a fourth pitcher. So like I am kind of comfortable there, but it doesn't mean they can't get better. So I have no issue with any trades that they make. The other thing is like nobody's talking about bats. I think they need another right-handed bat, and whether that's Kobe Mayo in the minors or somebody else that they go get.
Well, yeah,
I think you definitely need one.
You would have liked to have given Mayo the opportunity to get up here and prove that he could be that answer, but now you're probably not going to be able to get that answer before the deadline. So I think you're probably right about
Well, he's close to coming back, though. I think.
Oh,
is
is he? Okay, I thought it was still going to be.
I thought it was within a week or so he'd be back.
All right. Well, then, yeah, but he'll still, like then they'll want him to.
But
ramp
it's,
up.
you got to rev up.
Yep, exactly right. All right, and then finally, how confident are you going into the finals?
So I was talking about this earlier. From a gambling standpoint and analytically speaking, the Celtics are off the charts great.
Right.
It's one of the best regular season teams we've ever seen from an offensive and defensive standpoint. Metrics are off the charts. I mean, you look at and it's like when you talk about the consistency you were getting from them in the regular season where they were just beating everyone, and it was kind of surprising they lost. But then I look at it, and I'm trying not to be I got my heart here because I'm a Mavs fan. I'm trying not to look at it that way, but you do have these teams of destiny, and you see some weird things. We have the best player the Dallas Mavericks have the best player in that game, and they might even have the best two, depending on where you stack Kyrie against some of these other guys. And I know everybody loves Tatum, but I don't know, man. It's like everything in my head tells me the Celtics are going to run away with this and win 4-1 or 4-2. But it's the way I've been watching the Mavericks play, and I've been telling people this for years. Luka gets into the postseason, he turns into a different player. He's an absolute animal, especially in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to tell you I would take Boston in 5 or 6, but I don't feel good about it.
I understand what you're saying. I was trying to measure, I do think Boston's the better team. I think Dallas has the better closers, and I don't know in an NBA Finals which one I'd rather have, legitimately. And I know that people tell me I'm being disrespectful to Tatum and Brown. They haven't done it against the caliber of competition that Dallas's duo has done it against. I don't know. I don't know yet how I feel. I still think there's a possibility. The way that we watch this, I would rather – Minnesota's defense is unbelievable, and they just had no problem whatsoever. There's a part of me that says playoff basketball, I'd rather have the better, more proven closers than having the better overall team. And maybe that makes me a mark, but – I
see that's why I'm torn on this, and I'm trying not to go head versus heart. I'm trying to really look at it. And I was telling people I might suggest to people you should bet it this way, and then I don't bet the game at all just because I want to watch it and enjoy it. But it's a really difficult thing because when you talk about efficiency on offense and defense, the Celtics are it, man. I'm talking historically. So I was talking to one guy who he makes his own statistic or makes his own numbers and lines and things like that, and he thought the Celtics should be minus 400 in this series, and they're minus 220, 210. So I don't know, man. It's going to be hopefully we get a good series. I want the Mavs to win, but I think the Celtics do.
At JCon Sports on Twitter is how you follow him. I guess remind me both what's coming up on the show this week, and then did I see some news related to the website?
Yeah, so here's what's going on. With the show, it's just Rob and I for the rest of the week. Rob's actually on the road. He's in Toronto, so he's doing shows from the Rogers Center and then Tampa Bay when they go there. So we'll be, kind of gearing up, talking about all that stuff, Orioles related and of course Ravens related. And with me, I'm actually jumping on a meeting here at 1:30 with the guy that's building my new website. We should have it done by July and be able to launch all that other stuff. But for right now, I'm just doing my Telegram where I just text my plays to everyone. Had a really good week last week. The weekend was kind of a mixed bag where I didn't lose a lot, but I didn't win as much as I wanted.
Okay, that is a weird way of looking at it.
Well, so if I put out, what I do is I put out my top 5 plays and I tell everybody to focus on those.
Okay.
So on Saturday I went 2 and 3 in my top plays, which sucked, but I went 5 and 0 in my leans.
Huh.
And then a UFC bet that I threw out. So I technically I went 6 and 0, but it's the ebbs and flows, I like to say, of gambling. Where sometimes you, like the Oriole game, I had the over yesterday. There were 28 hits and they scored 7 runs. So, sometimes strange things happen.
All right. At J-Con Sports, as I said, and of course the Big Bag Morning Show, 105.7 The Fan. Love you, buddy. Always appreciate you. Let's talk again next Monday, all right?
Absolutely, man. I'll see you guys.
It's Jeremy Conn with us every Monday here on GCR. When we come back in, we will get a tidbit and tubular to wind things down for a Monday edition of Glenn Clark Radio.
Gambling can be a fun and entertaining experience, but there are risks involved. If you're planning on betting on the game at the casino or on your phone or computer, know your limit, stay within it. Set a budget and a time to stop. Remember, gambling isn't a financial solution, and it doesn't mix well with alcohol or drugs. Know the risks and have a plan before you begin gambling. For free and confidential services, call 1-800-GAMBLER 24/7 or go to helpmygamblingproblem.org.
Discover one of Baltimore's hidden gems at Guilford Hall Brewery. Enjoy dinner in our spacious brew pub, sip a signature cocktail in our outdoor dog-friendly beer garden, or take a tour of our brewery. Discover your new favorite local craft beer. From crisp lagers to hoppy ales, there's something for everyone to enjoy. Pair your brew with delicious appetizers and entrees. There are options for the whole family, but you have to try our fan-favorite giant pretzel. Guilford Hall Brewery, where every sip is a celebration. Visit us online at guilfordhall.com.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
The drug scene in Maryland is changing. Fentanyl and xylazine are being added to street drugs, and you may not even know it. Xylazine is not even intended for humans, and fentanyl is an opioid 50 times stronger than heroin and contributed to over 80% of overdose deaths in our state. Anyone who uses drugs, even occasionally, is at risk of overdose. To learn more, visit stopoverdose.maryland.gov or call or text 988.
The votes were all counted, and the results are official. Royal Farms was named #1 for food in the USA Today 10 Best poll, receiving more votes than any other convenience store chain in America. The next time you want to get some good food fast, doesn't it make sense to go to Royal Farms? Voted best in the USA and home of world-famous chicken. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
What company has the expertise to make your home healthier by purifying your air and killing all viruses, allergens, and bacteria? A.J. Michaels, Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis, ajmichaels.com.
One of the things that's definitely wrong with this country is that this dude still has a job somehow, some way. Glenn Clark.
All right, winding down for a Monday edition of the program. I was trying to think if there's anything else that I engaged with this weekend that we haven't had the opportunity to talk about. I didn't watch the Champions League final. Congratulations to Real Madrid. I used to love Champions League final day. Yeah. I don't care. I really don't care. But I used to love Champions League final day when it was in the middle of the week. I think I've told the story before. Like, I was a freshman in college, and my roommate was a soccer player. And so I hung out with all of the soccer team at UMBC. And, like, those dudes treated, especially the European guys, like, treated Champions League final day like the Super Bowl. And, like, we weren't allowed to go to class, and we weren't allowed to do, like, it was a party that day for Champions League final day. And they only moved to the weekend, like, a decade ago, right?
Yeah,
was it?
Feels recent.
I feel like it wasn't that long ago. I love Champions League final day. It was one of my favorite days of the year. But a Saturday, it's nice outside. We're going outside now. We're not trying to sit around all weekend and just watch sports. So that makes it difficult for it to be a Saturday afternoon. Just isn't going to register the same way, unfortunately, in this country.
2010, apparently.
It's a little bit more than a decade. Wow, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago. It's fine. I don't know. But, Real Madrid won the Champions League final. So that's what I've got for you. I watched 0 of it. Is there anything else this week? Whipsnakes lost the Atlas, right? Yeah, that's tough.
Especially because the Atlas played the day before, too. So
you thought they were going to have the advantage, right? Yeah, that's a big bummer. And then everybody was talking about the Caitlin Clark stuff from this weekend. I got to tell you, this is exhausting. Like, exhausting. It's basketball, man. She's really good. Wait till you find out what the Detroit Pistons used to do to Michael Jordan. Like, wait till you find out how they went up against Michael Jordan. There was a whole documentary. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was the only thing we watched during the pandemic. And, like, it was an entire chapter of the doc was how Michael Jordan was treated because he was a star and the Bulls weren't good enough otherwise. And so they said, let's go out physical. Let's go take shots at him. Let's go be ungodly aggressive. The lazy, well, these girls just hate the money train. Like, no, they're out there competing. That's what you do when you're an athlete is you compete. Is the idea that you're supposed to clear the lane? Like, hey, please, by all means, go score. Please go score 60 points, win every game. We're not going to try because you're the reason why we have charter flights. I mean, get the entire F out of here with that. Was the hip check from Kennedy Carter over the top on Saturday? Absolutely. Over the top. As a lot of people pointed out, the possession before that, Caitlin Clark was in throwing an elbow. Because they're competing. We're acting like she got sucker punched. She's going to get played physically. Yes, probably the league is going to have the officials try to tighten the whistles up a little bit because people are paying so much attention to it. But teams are going to choose to play physically against Caitlin Clark because Caitlin Clark's really good. And they want to challenge her physically. Which makes sense. But we're taking it to we're making it a race war. It's basketball. And I get it. Maybe you're not used to that because you're just watching women's basketball for the first time. But it's basketball. And you challenge players. Certain teams in particular have had, I bring up the bad boy Pistons, obviously, the Tim Duncan era San Antonio Spurs. Bruce Bowen. There have been lots of physical defenders over the years and guys that have been particularly willing to be that guy. You ever heard of Robert Horry? What he did to the Phoenix Suns? Everybody called him Big Shot Bob. There were a lot of markets where they called him Cheap Shot Bob. Because that's what he did. And I'm not telling you that, like, it's good. Again, I saw the same thing y'all saw. But we're acting like Kennedy Carter tried to murder Caitlin Clark. She tried to send a message. That's competition, man. That's sports. It was a flagrant foul. They missed it live, but they got it. They upgraded it. It's a flagrant foul. But the idea that Kennedy Carter's really kicked out of the league, get the entire F out of here. We've lost our minds. This is we're treating Caitlin Clark now like we treat Taylor Swift. These have to be deities. We can't have honest conversations. We have to pretend like every song that Taylor Swift makes is great. It ain't. It's embarrassing that she's won Album of the Year the last 3 times because those last couple of albums have been mid. But we can't do that in this country. We just decide that someone is exalted, and once they're exalted, we lose the ability to have context and conversation. Caitlin Clark will be fine because she's really good at basketball. But she's going to get challenged because she's in a league where everybody's not going to like walk in and say, okay, cool, you just come in here and dominate, and we'll just sit around and watch you. They want to compete. They want to win. And playing Caitlin Clark physically is something they've decided they're going to do. And she'll adjust it. Michael Jordan adjusted pretty well. Go back and watch. I mean, they really did cover it quite well in The Last Dance. It was a major storyline in The Last Dance. They could not break through in the East because they would get murdered by the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons would lay him the F out. And so he went and got tougher. And that's not to say that, again, We should just be calling for every team to take flagrant cheap shots. But this is not. We're pretending like this is some unheralded thing that's about pure hatred or spite or people are particularly embarrassing. These girls are all just racist towards Caitlin. Shut up. Like, it's just so brainless. It's basketball, Chief. Again, you're new to it because you've never watched women's basketball before. And you're like, what, these girls are physical? Yeah. They're athletes. Chill. It was an exhausting weekend on Twitter. Like, exhausting. With all of the back and forth. Also, there's like Matt Barnes, like, well, the girls in Indiana apparently don't like her because they're not coming in and being enforcers for her. Like, maybe, like, what we're doing the most right now. Like, is there an argument that, like, hey,
they gotta go out and trade for Angel Reese?
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Angel Reese is quite the enforcer. Like, if you recognize that a team is being particularly physical, then you might need to match their physicality. Yeah, I'll listen to that. Now, they might say internally, no, we don't want to get away from our game. We want to play our game. And by the way, they won on Saturday. They won the game against Chicago, where everybody was losing their minds. So it might very well be at the end that they say, we're glad we didn't get caught up in all that. They, decided to play a certain way. We didn't, and we won. And they turned around the next day and got their asses beat. And Caitlin Clark had a rough day. I didn't watch it.
Her worst. It was one of my tidbits. It was her worst statistical game of her college and pro career.
Yeah, I mean, it was bad yesterday. But, dude, we are trying so hard. Like, we just can't have a reasonable conversation about it. It's basketball, man. Like, they're competing. That's what they do. All right. Time for tidbits.
Have you ever thought of taking a cruise to these wonderful destinations with sunny skies and beautiful beaches? Well, wait no longer. We're ready for you to cruise from the Cruise Maryland Terminal.
Have a little phrase that you can go from baggage to margarita in about 15 minutes.
Choose fun with an array of destinations, onboard activities, entertainment, and world-class cuisine.
Contact your travel agent and book your cruise today. Let your adventure begin.
Yeah, great to have cruising back here in Baltimore. That is really, really good news, and happy to have them back on board here at GCR. All right, what you got for tidbits?
So the Caitlin Clark, she had 3 points, 10% shooting yesterday, and that was that was her 150th game since her college career started, and that has been her worst statistical output in any game since she became a college basketball player. Also, the other thing that people I saw were like kind of worked up is that the Fever have played like 11 games in the past like 20 days, so they're upset about the the WNBA schedule as well, and like they're looking at the Aces who have played apparently just 6 games in the past 20 days, and meanwhile the Fever had to play 11. So
I can't.
So maybe they do hate Caitlin.
Is that what it is? Do you think the league hates, or do you think that maybe the league is trying to get more Caitlin Clark early in the season to get greater attention for the league on the whole?
I think that would be smart.
Well, that's probably the reason why they're playing so many games early on in the year.
Louisa Rise.
Yes.
He's been
really good.
He's been very good.
I mean, he was really good.
Yeah.
Like, let's start with that.
Well,
he was really good.
He did not have a good month of. Well, I guess. For his standards, it wasn't a great month of April. But yeah, since he got to San Diego,
the guy was a batting champion. Like the guy was. Like, he's a hitter.
He's already had 4 4-hit games since joining the Padres on May 4th. He is the first player.
The cost was not. Yeah. Like I get it. It was real, but it wasn't overwhelming.
He is the first player with at least 4 4-hit games in his first 24 games with the franchise in baseball history. So first time that's happened. It also made me wonder about the most 4-hit games in baseball history. There's I'm trying to think if I want to do that one or if I want to do active. I think I want to do active because it's only his 18th. He's only had 18 games. 18 4-hit games Louisa Rise has.
Okay.
And there are 9 active players with 20 or more 4-hit games.
Wow, 9 active players with 20 or more. Trout?
Trout has 20.
I'm surprised it's only 20, just for the record.
Yeah.
Like,
I'll go over the all-time list.
Okay.
None of the active guys
who has
are
the
like
most? Is it Pete Rose?
It's not Pete Rose.
It's a little surprising.
He is second.
Okay. All right. Active players, 4 hit games. Active players, 4 hit games. I don't know why suddenly my brain. How about Nolan Arenado?
Nolan Arenado is 19.
Effing kidding me. Xavier, you want to come help me out on this one? You think you got any guesses? You can give him a microphone. Xavier is our new intern here at Pressbox this summer. How about Jose Altuve?
Jose Altuve is the active leader.
That makes sense.
38 4-hit games for Jose Altuve.
How many am I supposed to be getting?
You would have 7 more.
7 more.
There's 9 guys, 9 active players.
Andrew McCutchen, just based
Andrew
on.
McCutchen.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just based on.
22 for Andrew McCutchen.
You want to throw a Mookie Betts in there?
That's a good one, but he's young in his career.
Mookie Betts is an excellent guess. He is 3rd.
There you go.
28 4-hit games.
That's a hell of a statement about Mookie Betts. I say he's young in his career. He's not young.
There is
young,
a
but he's
place
still not like in his
where
Is Mookie Betts in his 30s yet? I don't think he is. Is he?
Be.
Is he?
Mookie Betts is. Oh shoot, doesn't have his age.
All right, so we got nothing then. We tried. So how about Carlos Correa?
He's 31. Mookie Betts.
Oh wow.
Carlos Correa. I don't think I saw his name on the list. No Correa.
Okay. How about?
Yeah, Correa nowhere near this list.
Freddie Freeman.
Freddie Freeman's a great guess. He is 2nd among active players with 29. One ahead of Mookie.
How about Paul Goldschmidt?
Paul Goldschmidt, another good guess, 23. Puts him tied for 5th. We have.
Where are we? Do we consider Votto to be active or not?
Votto, I don't think is considered active. Let me
Okay.
see where he may land if. I don't think he might not be on the list regardless.
Okay. How about Manny?
Manny Machado has 20, tied with Trout's.
So what am I got 7 now, right? That's where we're at.
Correct.
Man, how about?
Okay, Joey Votto is not considered active, but
Okay.
he would have counted. He has 25.
Okay. How about Yelich?
Not Christian Yelich. Because he had that 5-hit game the other day. Only 16 for Yelich.
Bum.
Yeah.
Sucks. Imagine spending money on that guy. Stupid. I really am struggling for another
What
one.
about DJ LeMahieu?
You got to say the microphone.
Sorry, DJ LeMahieu.
He's a good
How
guess. He
about
has
DJ?
19.
19.
Another
Just
19.
missed. Yeah, another 19er.
JD Martinez?
Not JD Martinez.
He's just a power guy. Like,
He actually has 17.
Well, I mean, like that
but-
longevity was what I was playing for there. I'm like trying to play.
One is a Padre.
One is a Padre.
Is hurt.
Oh, I don't know who's hurt, so that's difficult. So I don't think it's Tatis yet. It's one is a Padre. One is a Padre. And it's not Profar. It's not. Bogarts.
Yes, Xander Bogarts has 23, and then the guy that is 4th on this list among active players with 26, he is on an NL West team.
NL West team.
Not a good one.
Not a good one. Marte?
No, not Marte. They were in the World Series last year.
I know, but they haven't been good this. You been paying attention? They haven't been good. Charlie Blackmon?
Charlie Blackmon.
Okay.
Charlie Blackmon, 26 4-hit games in his career. So Pete Rose is 2nd all time.
Okay.
With 73.
Ty Cobb.
Ty Cobb,
Yeah.
87 4-hit games.
Jesus
Yes.
Christ. Could do the top 5. Tony Gwynn in the top 5?
Tony Gwynn's not in the top 5. Tony Gwynn has where is Tony Gwynn? He only had 40-something, which is a lot.
That's I would have expected him to be higher on the list, though. How about George Brett?
George Brett is just outside the top 5. You need 62 to be top 5. He is 61.
Wade Boggs.
Wade Boggs.
Just trying to think of hits guys. Like that's the problem is you got to think of hits specifically. Molitor?
Paul Molitor also. Actually, he had 62, so he's tied with Wade Boggs.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. 2 more.
Rod Carew?
Rod Carew is a good guess, but he's just outside 58.
I'm really angry if it's like Jeter. That would piss me off.
Not Jeter.
Thank God.
Yeah, it's not Jeter.
It's just anything that makes Jeter seem greater than he was. Like Derek Jeter was
this might make him seem greater than he was. 45, tied with Tony Gwynn.
Oh, son of a bitch. That's not good. Jeter's not Tony Gwynn. It's probably not Ichiro because he didn't play in America long enough. But it would have been Ichiro.
53 for Ichiro.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Think about that. Think about that when you try to sell me about how good Derek Jeter was. Ichiro played how many fewer years? I know because he played to a later age.
Yeah, but like those weren't.
Started in his career about a decade later than Derek Jeter did and finished with more 4-hit games. F your Derek Jeter nonsense. All right, I don't know. Tell me.
Well, they're teammates for a little bit, I guess, weren't they?
In New York, probably, yeah.
The Stan Musial.
Yeah, I guess that's the only place Derek Jeter played. It would have to be.
Right.
I said in like New York, like it could have been in Milwaukee.
Musial, 67 is third all time.
Oh, Stan Musial. Yeah, I should have gotten that one.
And then George Sisler.
Okay, it would have required me to go back. I could have done if you would have told me that we should have been doing old-timey baseball names. Because I do get excited about old-timey.
Orioles legend George Sisler. Right?
Well, St. Louis Browns legend George Sisler. Anyway. All right, very good. Very, very good. It's time for us to get tubular. Oh boy, we're gonna have to sharpen this, Griffin, moving forward. Yeah, we gotta tomorrow. We gotta have this fixed.
There is a place where tradition, family, and community gather, where the aspirations of talented young competitors takes root, and where the crossroads of history, culture, and renewal come together. This spring, experience America's newest and most innovative ballpark, Meritus Park in Hagerstown, Maryland, home of the Atlantic League Flying Boxcars. Plan your getaway today. You're welcome in Hagerstown, Maryland.
Just baseball and softball tonight. Of course, Orioles Blue Jays just after 7 on MASN 2. Grayson Rodriguez and Kevin Gausman, the pitching matchup there. It's also available on ESPN Plus in the rest of the country. MASN will have Mets Nationals at 6:45, which is also the MLB TV free game of the day. MLB Network, Brewers Phillies at 6:30, Fox Sports 1, Giants Diamondbacks at 9:40. Women's College World Series today. So the way it works is that this is like an elimination day. Oklahoma, Florida at noon. Oh, God, I forget which team. Like, one of the teams has to win once and the other team has to win twice. Like, so if the one team wins, they play another game immediately afterwards. And it's the same thing tonight for Texas and Stanford on ESPN.
Florida, Oklahoma's double elimination.
Right, but for one of them.
Oh, only for one of them.
So one of those teams, it's the same thing like in a regional in college baseball, right? Like one of those teams has an extra win going into today. And so if that team wins the first game, the series is over. If they lose, then they play another game, and whoever wins that one moves on. And I think this is to get into the semifinals, if I remember correctly.
That sounds. Or no, I think it is.
Today is the semi, and then the finals start on Wednesday. Is that what
Correct.
it is? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's too much going on. I don't have enough bandwidth. I'm watching, Cerundolo try to knock Djokovic out of the French Open right now. Wow. He's up break in the third after they split the first two sets. So I got too much.
Cerundolo.
Certainly not watching any American, man. Not doing that. But Coco Gauff is still alive. I do like that.
Fritz lost?
No, he did win.
Okay.
Fritz won.
He's the only one. Because what's his face? The other one lost.
Yeah, everybody lost this weekend. I don't know why my brain stopped functioning. Everybody lost.
One
this
of them,
weekend.
I didn't because
Seb Corda lost. Seb Corda lost. Tommy Paul lost, and then there was somebody else who was still alive this weekend. And
Tiafoe lost.
Well, Tiafoe lost last week. Yeah. Tiafoe, that was a dud. Maybe those were
Coco's
the last
still alive, right?
Coco, yeah, she plays tomorrow. Good. Yeah, Coco's still alive. But Emma Navarro was alive today. She lost. So down to one American woman. All right. Anyway. That's what's coming. Oh, and the USA Network for WWE Monday Night Raw. What do you have non-sports?
Let's see. It is.
You can take Xavier if you'd like. Oh, the website's working. Yay, go to PressBoxOnline.com. Just in time for the show to be over. Just in time. Don't go to PressBoxOnline.com/radio because we'll be done. But tomorrow, rejoin us at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Thanks, Xavier. Good to meet you. Appreciate your help.
Season 16 of American Ninja Warrior tonight on NBC at 8.
I'm only surprised because normally they always ask me to put Kabir Gabajimila on when the new season starts. Maybe I didn't check my email. maybe this is a me problem.
And then also on Fox, 9 p.m. a series premiere of The 1% Club, where
with Patton.
Hosted by Patton Oswalt, where it's just trivia with a bunch of people. I think
Mrs. Clark saw because we were watching MasterChef last week, and
you might like this game because it's trivia.
No, none of these games are for me.
Patton Oswalt.
I like Patton. I love Patton. Patton also is a friend of radio. Like, Patton would go on every radio show at all time. Like, he was great. Patton, my wife was trying to figure out how she recognized him because she saw a trailer for the show or a preview for the show, and she was like, where do I know him from? And then my brain has got to go to, what would my wife know Patton Oswalt from, right? Like, I can't think about what was Patton Oswalt in. I got to go to, what do you know him from? So the first guess, of course, was Ratatouille, right? Like, but she wouldn't have seen him in Ratatouille.
Right.
Like, she recognized his face, not his voice. I was like, all right. And then it dawned on me, oh, I know exactly what it is. It's 21 Jump Street. Because he was the professor. Remember, he was like,
okay.
he was like, do whatever you want. See those two girls? I'm having sex with both of them.
I think of Parks and Rec for some reason.
Yes,
too.
Parks and
higher
Rec
up
would be.
higher up
What,
on
that,
his
I even
roster.
liked that last show that he was on NBC that I can't even think of the name of it. Or maybe it was just on Peacock. Maybe it wasn't on NBC. It was great. It was set in a high school, and it had, it had what's his face from Always Sunny, Dennis. It had Dennis from Always Sunny in it.
I can't remember this show.
It was great. It was a great show, and Patton was the principal.
Oh, King of Queens, obviously.
No.
Obviously.
It's a giant no. God, what the hell was the name of this show?
He did a voice in BoJack.
No,
Horseman.
get to the show that I'm talking
Okay,
about.
all right.
Stop. God.
He wasn't in Goldbergs, was he?
No, maybe.
All right,
I don't know.
sorry, he was
Probably did
Goldbergs, but
a cameo, but he wasn't a regular in the Goldbergs. It's God damn it.
All right, hold on. Give me a chance. Hold on.
I hate you.
Look at his TVography.
AP Bio. I came up with it in 3 seconds.
Oh, yeah, all right.
AP Bio.
I didn't think of it.
Jesus. Yes, it was a very good show.
Oh, he's in one episode of Seinfeld as a clerk. As a store clerk.
Yeah, he used to come on the radio all the time. He used to be a regular, because he was also always touring and like coming into towns. I love Patton. Patton's a great guy. And he was in AP Bio with Glenn Howerton, who of course was Dennis. It is Dennis on Always Sunny, and it was a great show. It was just never given any promotion, and it had like a community kind of feel to it. Like,
he was a fire marshal in Brooklyn Nine-Nine for 2 episodes.
Yeah, that's I think I even remember that. It was great. I love Patton. Anyway, go ahead.
So the 1% Club hosted by Patton Oswalt. Those are really the Lifetime's on a heater right now, I guess. They've got Gypsy Rose, Life After Lockup. They're doing a series on that as well.
Gypsy Rose is a total blind spot for your boy.
Oh, she was the one. She killed her mom.
I'm familiar with
Okay.
it. I'm familiar with it. It's just not.
She was like TikTok loves her, I think.
Okay.
And well, I don't know. I don't want to say.
I know
loves
it's
her,
a
but
complicated story.
yeah.
I understand all of that. It's just.
Fallon will have Jessica Alba and Marlon Wayans.
I do love Jessica Alba.
She has a movie on Netflix.
And I bet she still has a major fastball.
Oh, she does. She's The Trigger Warning is the name of the movie coming out on Netflix later in June or later this month. So she's like a special forces commando and gets wrapped up in a dangerous conspiracy.
Sure she does.
When she returns to her hometown, looking for answers behind her beloved father's death.
Can't wait to dive in on that.
And I got a feeling his death was no accident.
Yeah, I got a funny feeling. And
then Marlon Wayans has a comedy special on Prime coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got to figure out how I can get that bundle where it's like $20 and it gets you all of Netflix, Max, like Verizon has bundled all of them up together, and you can get it all for $20. But how do I? Do I have to cancel all of them individually and re-sign up? I just got to get all the details on that.
You can get Netflix and Max with
with ads.
Okay.
I don't care about that. It's $20.
Yeah,
I'm getting it all for $20.
I mean, yeah, I don't think
it's like Netflix, Max,
for
Hulu, and there's like 5 different streaming apps that you can all get bundled together from Verizon for $20 a month. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's awkward because I don't know. Anyway, I'll talk about it another time.
Race to Survive, obviously, on USA.
Can't miss that. All right. Thanks today to Jon Meoli. Thanks also to Dan Shulman and to Jeremy Conn. We'll get all of it up in the greatest hits section of the
Oh, my God, it's so good.
tab at GlennClarkRadio.com. Stuff and things.
Yeah.
We got to lock it up. Stuff and things. Thanks, everybody at PressBox. All of our great sponsors and partners, including Live Casino and Hotel. Visit Hagerstown in Washington County. Cruise, Maryland. A.J. Michaels. Guilford Hall Brewery. Royal Farms. The Ed Block Courage Awards. HelpMyGamblingProblem.org. Costa Sin. MSAA, the Baltimore Orioles, your local Toyota dealer, buyatoyota.com. Thanks to Griffin at Griffin_Bass. Follow us, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Glenn Clark Radio. Have a great Monday evening. Go Birds. Duke sucks.